It's only September, and the night wind can't wait to soak in the chill. Tang Yi was at Ali's front desk after finishing the bill, and when he looked up, he saw Gu Yanting protecting Lin Rui into the taxi. Lin Rui's long and refreshing, bright peach eyes slightly curved towards Gu Yanting. On top of his head is Gu Yanting's hand blocking the car door. It is a pair of well-joined hands, which are usually carefully maintained, but now they are quietly covering the door panel in a service attitude. Tang Yi was about to walk out of the door for a while, and his expression hadn't been cleared, but his feet subconsciously shrank back. The temperature difference between the inside and outside of the door was agitated, and he shivered suddenly, and a row of small pimples flew on his exposed arms. The elevator behind him made a ding, and several buddies who used to go to the toilet together came out, supporting each other. The first one was chubby, with a bald head, and saw Tang Yi tut at the door. "Hey, sister-in-law, wait for us." Tang Yi stopped for a while, and when he turned back, he had already smiled. "Yes, I'm afraid you guys will fall into the pit, shouldn't I go back and fish?" Tonight, this group of people hosted a reception banquet for Lin Rui. After they received people from the airport, they went straight to Ali KTV. Tang Yi was not familiar with them originally, but he and Gu Yanting had some conflicts these days. Tang Yi was thinking of finding a chance to break the ice with Gu Yanting, so he hurried over after the meeting in the evening. It's just that he didn't eat lunch or dinner, and his stomach was cramped. When he saw Gu Yanting singing duet with Lin Rui in the box, he looked so deeply in love, and the thought of breaking the ice disappeared. Everyone was drinking a little too much. Just take a taxi back to each other. Tang Yi has been under a lot of pressure these days. After drinking on an empty stomach, his intuition is not good. When he was about to leave, Gu Yanting raised his hand and said, "I'm coming." Tang Yi rarely saw him so considerate, so he was stunned for a moment, thinking that he was also remorseful, so he went to check out. Go out again and see the scene at the beginning. Gu Yanting's eyes were not originally him. Tang Yi pressed his stomach and gasped in pain. He slowed down, and then waved his hand to a few people without changing his face. "You guys go back slowly, you are fat, you drink the least, send them home before leaving." Someone stood at attention, "Make sure to complete the task of sister-in-law." Tang Yi shook his head and smiled, turned and walked forward. "I'll go with your brother first, or I'm afraid that your brother will go with him and never return." The four people behind him laughed, and the thin monkey nodded drunkenly and shouted, "It's really not that. Sister-in-law. It's difficult for others, Lin Rui wants to abduct, my brother will follow him soon." Tang Yi still smiled, the fat man's face changed, he hurriedly blocked the man's mouth, and said to Tang Yi with a smile, "That was in the past, now there is a sister-in-law, how dare Gu Ji?" Tang Yi waved his hand, walked to the car, went to the co-pilot, and said, "Master, let's go." Tang Yi and Gu Yanting have been dating for 3 years, and they knew that Lin Rui existed like a secret garden before they started. At that time, the latter went abroad to continue his studies. Before leaving, he went all the way north from Guangzhou and Shanghai, and gathered more than 10 times of Mian Jijia to see him off. Most of the school's affairs are left to Gu Yanting to handle. Gu Yanting ran before and after, and waited until he was on the way to the airport before he was able to have a good conversation with the big celebrity. At that time, Tang Yi was still Gu Yanting's ordinary friend, sitting in the same taxi with Gu Yanting to drop off the plane. He sat in the co-pilot, while Gu Yanting and Lin Rui sat side by side in the back row. "Is everything confirmed? Is there someone over there to pick it up?" "Well, my dad did it for me." "Okay. Thank you for helping me so much. When I come back, I invite you to dinner." Lin Rui smiled. The well-proportioned skeleton accompanied by the delicate facial features really makes people feel good. In comparison, Gu Yanting's answer was a bit rigid, "You're welcome, feel free to ask me anything." Lin Rui went to Australia, Gu Yanting did not pass Set 6 in English, and there were no relatives or friends there who could provide substantial help. It's a pity that the parties involved didn't realize it, and they took it seriously. Lin Rui smiled. Tang Yi saw in the rearview mirror the fleeting disdain in the smile, and felt a little sullen in his heart, and also felt a little distressed for Gu Yanting. Gu Yanting accompanies Lin Rui to run here and there at the airport. Tang Yi and him have known each other for a long time, and he was a little tempted. Abandoned little animals are generally pitiful, and suddenly have a desire for protection, intending to make a confession. Tang Yi prepared the lines in his heart, and Gu Yanting finally grabbed Lin Rui, who was about to go through the security check. "I'll wait for you to come back. When you come back, if you can promise to be with me, I'll come out and marry you." Tang Yi frowned slightly, but he didn't say anything, but he sighed pitifully for Gu Yanting 100 times. Lin Rui is obviously not interested in him. Is it stupid that he acts like a spare tire for others? Even if Lin Rui came back 3 years later and promised him, how could he Gu Yanting marry someone? Go abroad to get one? Or make a fake certificate that don't need 199, just use 99? Tang Yi's ridicule went to the sky, and he was helpless at Gu Yanting's infatuation and stupidity. That oath was also left behind by him. After all, Tang Yi just wanted to have a try with Gu Yanting at that time. He never thought about it, let alone, if one day Lin Rui really came back, and he had nothing to do with Gu Yanting, he would how to get around. The taxi quickly slid into the expressway, and the speed of the car increased sharply. At night, there are few cars on the expressway. Tang Yi's smiling expression was torn apart by the wind, and slowly, the crack became bigger and bigger, and it was twisted. Tang Yi turned his head, raised the window, rubbed his face, and heard the speech behind. "Have you been doing well these past few years?" "Very good, how about you?" Lin Rui's voice did not change much, just like his face, as if he had done advanced preservation. "I'm all right, just like that." Gu Yanting said lightly, "It feels like it hasn't happened in the past 3 years. I feel like I haven't graduated yet." Lin Rui obviously agrees with this point, and is also excited. Yes, I'm afraid you don't know me." "Hey, how can Cao Fat sing and be out of tune?" Gu Yanting let out a low laugh, and began to talk about the scandal of those few people. Tang Yi rubbed his face and lowered the car window. Tonight's group of people often eat and drink with Gu Yanting. Although Tang Yi did not classify them as friends, he never took a cold seat and even cooked for them several times. Self-confessed that this relationship can be considered a good deal. However, at this moment Gu Yanting and Lin Rui were completely at a loss. It is the name he knows, but he has never heard of those things, let alone participated in them. It seems that his connection with them is only a few simple meals. It's just that after the meal is over, it will be pulled sooner or later, and the relationship seems to be gone after pulling. Tang Yi pinched his eyebrows, thinking that the recent project must be too difficult, and he is a bit world-weary. Not good, too bad. The road was smooth and the taxi stopped slowly, next to the garden community where Lin Rui lived. This community was developed by Runhua, a well-known big real estate developer in China. Everywhere is splendid and magnificent, but the night lights inside the community are dim enough. Gu Yanting got out of the car to get his luggage first. After Lin Rui got down, he glanced at the community and hesitated. "Why is your community so dark?" "There are residents on the first floor. The property said that the lights on the first floor will affect the rest of the first floor." Lin Rui smiled, took the suitcase from Gu Yanting's hand, and handed over all his other luggage. Mother Lin, who picked up the plane, has a small boarding case at the moment. Tang Yi glanced at the R on the box, which was exactly the same as the one he had seen before. "Come on, I'll take you in. You went crazy with these before you lost the jet lag, and drank wine again." Gu Yanting said a few words, then turned to look at Tang Yi. "Tang Easy, slow down, I still have something to do, let's take a step first." Tang Yi put his hand on his forehead, looked through the rear-view mirror, and met Gu Yanting's dark eyes from a distance. Waiting for the two to react, they turned back to the taxi driver and whispered, "Let's go, master." "Young man, it's not right to see your face. Are you uncomfortable?" Tang Yi's hand never left his left abdomen, and now his face doesn't know whether it is angry or painful, and Bai is a little scary. He slowed down and tried to take a deep breath. "It hurts. Go to the hospital, any hospital will do." Tang Yi leaned on the seat tiredly, thinking, true love is back. What? Otherwise, divide it up. The idea of breaking up has been in Tang Yi's mind many times. Tang Yi is also good, but obviously not in the same style as Lin Rui. Lin Rui has always been the appearance of a cool and refreshing big boy and a beautiful teenager, with a large open t-shirt, narrow leg cropped trousers, and never only wears canvas shoes to expose his ankles. Gu Yanting likes this. Before Tang Yi, he dated more than a dozen boyfriends, and they were all copies of Lin Rui. Tang Yi has been wearing shirts and trousers since college. Until now, as soon as the wardrobe is opened, the rows are full of well-ironed business suits. Coupled with the pair of black-rimmed glasses, there is a majestic BGM wherever you go. Gu Yanting took him out at first, and among the table full of friends, Tang Yi was like a class teacher who had penetrated into the interior of bad students. I couldn't help but speak in an eloquent tone. If the prelude that wanted to pull out the ruffian was not done well, I had to bite my tongue later. After several times, Tang Yi put on a few more casual outfits, but he was still wearing shirts and trousers, and the shoes were always upright and didn't look like a guy would wear them. He is really not a serious gay, except for Gu Yanting. Tang Yi has never had the idea of falling in love with others. Therefore, although it has been clearly seen many times that Gu Yanting is not good for himself, and the two have many discords, Tang Yi never said the word breakup. This time, the idea took off again, but she refused to go on. Sit upright on the tip of Tang Yi's heart, waiting for the moment to walk out of Tang Yi's mouth. Tang Yi was taken to the municipal hospital by a taxi driver. The master looked at him several times along the way, and then stopped talking and drove the car very fast. When he arrived at the place, the master turned off the car and got off, and turned around to help Tang Yi. "Young man, don't work so hard, your body is important." The driver's wrinkled face was unexpectedly kind. With a move in his heart, the hand that wanted to refuse was withdrawn, and he lowered his head and smiled. "My son is also out of town. Alas, in Shanghai, every time I make a phone call, it must be past 10 o'clock in the evening. We are all asleep here, and he hasn't gotten off work yet." I followed Tang Yi all the way into the hospital and saw him hang up the number, and then he waved his hand. "I hear your accent is not local, so take it easy, don't be too tired. You don't know the heart of being a parent, hey? Worried, distressed. My parents are gone." The night was too dark, Tang Yi easily let out his mouth. As soon as she said it, she felt inappropriate, and smiled apologetically at the master. "You and auntie take care of your health, there are blessings waiting for you in the future. Your son is so good, wait for it to pass after these 2 years, it will be leisurely." Tang Yi is handsome and upright, and his words just scratched the itch of the old master. The master opened his mouth shyly and proudly, and walked away with a smile. "Tang Yi," a nurse shouted from behind, "why is it you again?" The bottle was marked, and a bed was arranged. "It's not a big problem, Tang Yi has been drinking and socializing since the beginning of work. When you go to the south on business, you can tap it. The label of T-City people outside is bright and generous, and they can drink loyalty. Tang Yi's job is to meet all the small bosses. There are many people there who have had a painful experience of being persuaded to drink by people in T-City. Therefore, when Tang Yi passed by, they would first hint that we should eat more vegetables and drink less wine." Tang Yi smiled, thinking that would be really good. However, in various places around T-City, a meal is indispensable. Tang Yi has been down for 3 years, and his whole body is excellent, except for his strong stomach. Coupled with the irregularity of eating, there are always 3 or 4 times in the hospital a year. This time, there was a list that he was in charge of and it was coming to a critical point. Before it was released, Tang Yi might just leave after punching the bottle. This time, he didn't know where the frustration came from, so he thought about it and asked the doctor to arrange a bed for him for the first time. Without sleepless nights, Tang Yi lay down at dawn with his eyes open, and then began to call the people under him one by one. The first call was made at 6 a.m. to assistant Xiao Yang. Tang Yi arranged a few things, waited for Xiao Yang to write them down one by one, then paused and said, "In the file cabinet in my office, the first box on the far left, there is my apartment. You can move in and live for a few days. The apartment is just behind the company's office building, only about 40 square meters, with 1 bedroom and 1 living room." Before working overtime until midnight, Tang Yi asked a few people to follow him to the apartment to sleep. Xiao Yang has been there several times and knows the place. Ah! Xiao Yang was taken aback, and his first reaction was not to dare. "I don't have a few days to go, the house is empty and wasteful. Your home is so far away from the company, where can you live for a few days and have a good rest?" Tang Yi smiled, "By the way, help me take care of the group." Duanzi is a tortoise raised by Tang Yi. It is round and cute, but it often eats red jade as meat, and is indomitable. Xiao Yang was no longer polite, and happily agreed. Tang Yilin hung up the phone, and said softly, "If I'm not in the company, you should learn more from Mr. Ning. Mr. Ning loves to drink black tea, and I happen to have 2 boxes of Jinjunmiai in my apartment. Send it to him." Xiao Yang nodded. The vague and somewhat ominous thoughts were about to pop up, and he was hurriedly held back by himself, even frightened. The second call was made to Deputy Manager CAO Zheng Xian. "Manager CAO, it's me." Tang Yi's tone has become serious, and the pressure is getting heavier. "Well, I'm taking a few days off, you must implement these things." CAO Zhenswan's side there was a rattling sound, which should have been recorded on the phone. Tang Yi arranged several important things in the marketing department for him to do one by one, and then determined the feedback method and time. "Old CAO Zheng Xian replied immediately, "Here." Tang Yi paused and said, "It's all right, do it well." Not long after CAO Zhenswan's call, the person responsible for notifying Xiao Yang was in place. The people in their marketing department have always been there earlier than the company's cleaning ant. Just after 8 o'clock in the morning, the team leaders of the online meeting were all in place. Tang Yi sat up with support on the side of the bed, with a window behind him. Half of the curtain was missing, just the sun was spilling all over Tang Yi. As soon as the meeting started, the team leaders in suits and leather shoes at the company were stunned. Tang Yi only wore a light blue shirt with 2 open necklines, revealing a straight collarbone. Tang Yi has phoenix eyes, but the brow bones are bulging, and the pretty handsome eyebrows are flat, and there is a murderous aura. Everyone is accustomed to seeing the appearance of Manager Tang in a suit and leather shoes, who is wearing glasses. Suddenly, they saw the man on the other end of the video frowning slightly, and his handsome face was uncovered. Unmasked exposure suddenly shocked a heart. "Morning, boss." The new female colleague was the first to say hello, smiling and greeting in the video. "Morning." Tang Yi's voice was cold, glanced at the screen, and said with headphones, "Yan Ke, first calculate the latest odds of the current Huayu project." A video conference was less than half an hour, but Tang Yi arranged the work to a week later. This week's possible emergencies and countermeasures were all pointed out by him. At the same time everyone recorded, they couldn't help but secretly wonder. Surprisingly, Tang Yi seldom expresses opinions. Most of the time, he guides their work direction. Although they all knew that all the company's signing records were created by Tang Yi, they never thought that Tang Yi could keep all the order items in mind, and could accurately point out the potential resistance points of each order. However, this is where the suspicion is. The company rumored a few days ago that the general manager of the marketing department was going to be replaced. It is said that it was a returnee who came directly from the headquarters. Originally, Tang Yi had been calm these few days, but they also thought that manager Tang, who was afraid that the turtle had come to his house, would definitely show his power and shoot the other party's soul. Who knows what this posture is, but Tang Yi will retreat without a fight. Boss. A female employee was shocked by the fear that Tang Yi was about to leave. She quietly glanced outside the conference room, turned her head and asked with red eyes, "Boss, have you been in these days? Not coming to the company?" Tang Yi raised his eyebrows with a smile and nodded. "Damn it, boss." Tang Yi shook his head and pinched his eyebrows helplessly, "Don't guess. Anyway, we will follow you. Boss, if you quit, we will quit. I will resign immediately." "Don't make trouble," Tang Yi raised his hand and waved, and said slowly, "Who said I'm leaving? I'm just taking a rest." He looked at the nervous children on the opposite side. Face, smiled slowly, "If you are fine, I will be fine." At the end of the meeting, Tang Yi took the phone, pulled out the SIM card, took out another one from the suit pocket next to it, inserted it, turned it on again, and a text message came in. "Lin Rui is ill. Auntie Lin and I will take care of him together. You can eat well." Gu Yanting's sister-in-law, "Are you home yet?" "We're all here, don't worry." "Ha, how fat is it, Tang Yi? I'm Yanting's friend Shan Fan. I saw that you drank a lot tonight, and your face is not very good. If you need to call me at any time, my brother is on duty at the municipal hospital tonight." 137, 1109. Tang Yi's fingers stopped slightly, and he glanced up at the ward. The THRE Epperson ward was empty. There is a bedside table next to his bed. In addition to the standard configuration, there is a pot of luxuriant bamboo, which is stacked on top of each other. Such special care is hard to detect if you don't look carefully. Tang Yi pondered for a while, and replied with 2 words, "Thank you." The last text message is Tang Yi's colleague Ning Xiu. The airborne soldier is called Lin Rui. He is back from Yeji University and will be employed tomorrow. He will be named as the deputy manager of your second department and will not participate in the department for the time being. Business. Tang Yi raised his eyebrows, but before replying, a call came in. "Gu Yanting is calling." "Hey, Tang Yi, where are you?" Tang Yi knocked on the armrest beside the bed. "Outside, what's wrong?" "It's nothing, it's Lin Rui." Gu Yanting hesitated and said, "He said that the company he wants to join is on Zhonghui Road. I talked a lot today, and I'll live there." "Oh, what's wrong?" "He asked me if I could rent a short-term lease at our place for a month. When he finds a house, he will move out immediately." "You saw his house yesterday. It's too far from Zhonghui Road. In the morning and evening, during the peak hours of get-off work, the section of Guangdongshan Road can be blocked for an hour." "Oh, so it is." Tang Yi said with a smile, "The house is yours, of course you call the shots. Aren't you angry?" Gu Yanting asked subconsciously, and after asking, it was a little unnatural, "Didn't you quarrel with me over his photos before? I'm afraid you feel uncomfortable." "Of course, I really have no idea about him now, we are just ordinary classmates." "It's okay." Tang Yi said in surprise, "But if you have concerns, it's not good. Otherwise, forget it." "Hey!" Gu Yanting was taken aback. "Aren't you afraid that I'll feel uncomfortable?" Tang Yi said, "After all, he's just an ordinary classmate, so it's not good for you to worry about sleeping and eating every day. So, where he came from, go where he is." Tang Yi has this kind of ability. Obviously what you want is A, but he can pick out A B from the euphemisms of "it's impossible" or "this is not afraid." Yundan Fengqing made a final decision, and then waited for you to kowtow to thank you. Gu Yanting's teeth hurt, Lin Rui was right across from him at the moment. "Where are you going?" came out clearly from the microphone, and the smile on Lin Rui's face suddenly froze. Gu Yanting has something to worry about these days, and when he called, he forgot that he was in a cold war with Tang Yi. At this time, Tang Yi, who was touted by him as gentle and honest all morning, slapped his face on the spot, and his face suddenly turned black. "Tang Yi! Beep, the call has been hung up." Lin Rui was a little embarrassed. Seeing Gu Yanting's face ashen and his muscles tensed, he hurriedly reached out and pulled Gu Yanting's arm. "Yanting, don't argue about me and the two of you again." Lin Rui seemed to be knowledgeable, waved his hands and smiled. "It doesn't matter, I'll just get up earlier, just experience it." Domestic life. Gu Yanting can only nod. "I'm really sorry for this, Tang Yi, he's not in a good mood recently." "Oh? Did you quarrel?" Lin Rui was surprised. "That must be your fault, Tang Yi is such a good person, don't know how to cherish it, be careful of being kidnapped." Gu Yanting frowned, did not continue the topic, turned his face and asked him, "What are you doing when you come back? Why are you in such a hurry to go to work?" "In the ER, there is no way, they are very tight." Lin Rui lowered his head, revealing a large area of snow-white skin under the big open t-shirt. "Now my mother is also old, I always want to earn money to support my family." "Your family is not?" Gu Yanting felt that the name of the company sounded familiar, but was still attracted by the second half of the sentence. Lack of money is not something that Lin Rui's family has to do. But thinking about Lin Rui's godfather, he couldn't keep asking. Lin Rui's mother is a junior high-ranking junior, and she is the boss of an entertainment company. This company is not big, but it has also won a few small artists, and it has its own place in the industry. Since then, the boss has become suspicious, and to Lin Rui's mother, except for the shopping cart and cash, other property is like a thief to guard against the mother and son. Gu Yanting grew up lovingly from a father and mother. At that time, when he saw Lin Rui, whom I felt pity for, crying in a disheveled manner, covered with old man's finger marks, he almost picked it up. The knife went desperately to find the beast boss. Lin Rui is simple and weak, and looks like he needs someone to protect him. What's more, he also saved Gu Yanting's life. Lin Rui knew what he was going to say, and smiled self-deprecatingly. Gu Yanting turned his eyes away, walked with Lin Rui silently for a while, and said, "Don't work too hard. If you encounter any problems, call me at any time." Lin Rui's finely crafted face raised slightly, and said, "Then don't bother me." "No." Gu Yanting glanced at him, did not make any further promises, pointed to a grocery store not far away, and said, "Come on, invite you to dinner." Lin Rui nodded, "Okay, I haven't eaten it for a long time, it's weird." He followed closely, and suddenly said, "Yanting, you are more mature than before, and more handsome." Gu Yanting's handsomeness is recognized by the school. His IQ and EQ are average, but his height and appearance are top-notch. He is 1.85 meters tall, with long legs in an inverted triangle, and big European-style double eyelids. In the words of a fat man, a roll of his eyes with deep double eyelid folds can catch a fly. Tang Yi once sighed that Gu Yanting's face is not enlightened. Gu Yanting asked him how to open this orifice. Tang Yi said with a smile, "Who knows, Su is waiting for someone to touch your heart, you are really anxious, rushing into a rage," and also sublimated. Gu Yanting pouted, disapproving. Tang Yi is the most scheming, most mature, most prudent, most decisive, and most arrogant of his peers he has ever seen. He, Gu Yanting, has all 7 orifices, and he can't keep up with Tang Yi's hair. The two of them quarreled at least 9 times out of 10 because Gu Yanting couldn't talk about Tang Yi at home, and finally acted in a hurry. "Why are you arguing this time?" Gu Yanting was in a trance and forgot. Guang remembered that he punched Tang Yi in the stomach at the end, and the latter lay down on the sofa angrily. When Gu Yanting remembered to coax in the middle of the night, that person had already left. I didn't bring my clothes, I didn't take my phone, I was in a hurry. Yanting? Yanting! Lin Rui couldn't help grabbing Gu Yanting's wrist. Yanting, are you alright? No, I probably haven't slept well recently. Gu Yanting raised his hand and pinched his eyebrows. Let's talk about you, how have the past 2 years been? Gu Yanting invited Lin Rui to finish dinner, and then drove him to the mall to buy some clothes for work. When he returned home, it was already past 7 in the evening. The dim yellow light came out from the window on the 4th floor. Gu Yanting saw it from a distance, and he could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. He is not a fool, Tang Yi made no secret of his dislike of Lin Rui. Thinking about it last night on KTV, Tang Yi didn't have an attack, but also to save some face for himself. Gu Yanting has a good face and everyone knows that Tang Yi has been with him for 3 years. It's just that my friends see each other once or twice a week, and he and Tang Yi are old couples. Gu Yanting parked the car, looked up at his window, stood for a while before going upstairs. Gu Yanting is a city person, but Gu's father and Gu's mother are both ordinary workers and live in the staff dormitory of Tongzilu, so he followed the bear children in the dormitory area since he was a child, jumping up and down. These carefree days continued into high school. During the military training, Gu Yanting began to dream of his instructor at night. He was tall, and he rarely saw the instructor's face when he was standing behind him, but the breath of a mature man made him start to have various impulses as a teenager. At this time, he met Lin Rui. Gu Yanting went home from vacation, and as soon as he got off the bus, he was hit and flew out by a car coming in the opposite direction. It was cold and there were few people on the road. A few of the people who came across screamed louder than him. The hit-and-run vehicle escaped, and there was no surveillance near the broken building area in the suburbs. If it wasn't for Lin Rui passing by there, 80% of Gu Yanting would have been stunned. Lin Rui called the police and an ambulance, squatting next to Gu Yanting in pure white clothes, constantly encouraging him and calling him. Half dazed and half awake, that beautiful face was deeply engraved into Gu Yanting's mind. After going to college, Gu Yanting saw his classmate Lin Rui at the freshman registration, and almost flew out of the dormitory with joy. It's a pity that the two had no fate. After Gu Yanting knew that Lin Rui was of the same kind, he confessed without hesitation, but was rejected. Lin Rui said that because the two were too familiar with each other, in fact, it seemed that it was because Gu Yanting was too poor. Even if Gu's father opened a small hotel later, he could afford Gu Yanting to eat, drink and buy famous brands, but compared with those friends Lin Rui had friends with, the gap between them was still enough to span 2 classes. Gu Yanting knows what he knows, but Lin Rui is like a white moonlight in his heart. Since the 2nd year of high school, all his thoughts have been dried under this white light, day and night. Deep-rooted love. So he stepped back consciously, not a spare tire is better than a spare tire, and he served Lin Rui hard. The relationship between the two is defined as friends, best friends. The dozen or so little boyfriends Gu Yanting dated during his college days knew the existence of Lin Rui, but everyone expressed kindness and understanding. There are those who do not understand, and they have been kicked away by Gu Yanting. But now, Gu Yanting dare not kick Tang Yi. Although he didn't know why he agreed to Tang Yi's request to try it out back then, he even stubbornly believed that the relationship between him and Tang Yi had only grown over time, just like the dependence of raising a dog and a cat. There is no element of love. But he still didn't dare to anger Tang Yi easily. The door is hidden. Gu Yanting pushed open the door and went in, and saw Tang Yi sitting on the sofa watching TV. His light blue shirt was open with 2 buttons, and it was a rare wrinkle. The mouse disappeared without a trace. Tang Yi smiled lightly and spit out a feeling after watching, stupid. Tang Yi's school is a pace setter and a leader at work. Today, he said the word stupid in a serious manner, like a mantra. Gu Yanting was stunned, and then stopped. Tang Yi has turned his face to look at him, and gently put one hand on the frame of his glasses. Are you back? The two had been in a cold war for several days. Tang Yi was polite, and Gu Yanting didn't want to screw it. So he nodded. Well, back. Have you eaten yet? He changed his shoes, picked up a small translucent bag, and put it on the coffee table. I bought it for you. Square little box with a ring inside. Tang Yi squeezed it lightly and looked at it for a long time. It is a jewelry store frequented by trendy men. He doesn't mix circles. It doesn't mean he is really unfamiliar with these. In fact, Tang Yi is almost clear about what people in the circle usually like to play with, and who will buy what. Gu Yanting, who never goes shopping, has only one possibility to buy things from this store. Tang Yi squeezed the ring and nestled in the sofa. The fingers of his right hand tapped his knee lightly. The trendy shop on the second floor of Xinhai? This, about 288. Gu Yanting froze as he walked towards the bedroom, turned around and looked over in surprise. Tang Yi is very thoughtful. To put it bluntly, the city is too deep. It's just that when the two of them get along, Tang Yi is like a warm big cat, occasionally showing sharp claws and never scratching Gu Yanting. Today, the edge has been revealed a little, and Gu Yanting has already noticed that something is wrong. Yet. That's not bad, 10 rings are just enough for one meal. You stalking me? Gu Yanting frowned, suddenly wanting to be annoyed. The Japanese food he and Lin Rui ate at noon cost a total of over 2,900. Gu Yanting's face sank, and he suddenly felt that his thoughts of reconciliation downstairs were stupid. Explain? Negotiate? Who is Tang Yi? Where do you need to speak? Who knew that Tang Yi raised his hand to cover his eyes and smiled slowly. You really look down on me, Gu Yanting. Lin Rui loves Japanese food. Today you invite him to dinner. Is it possible to go to a Sichuan restaurant? In the whole Tea City, there are no more than 3 Japanese food stores that Lin Ruiyan can enter. His house is too far away, and Redstone has been renovating recently, that is to say, all aspects of unity are suitable. What's more, the couple's seat there is quite famous, and the minimum consumption is 2,600. You Gu Yanting are so good looking, don't add any extras. How can it be done? Tang Yi turned his face and said lightly, almost, 2,900. Gu Yanting was shocked. Across this distance, he can only see Tang Yiwei's side. Under the black-rimmed glasses, his eyebrows are lowered, and there seems to be no waves. However, the layers of coldness spread from the solace of Gu Yanting's feet, all the way to the cover of his heavenly spirit, covered in white sweat. Sure enough, Tang Yi wanted to know something, and it didn't take much effort. Then what? Gu Yanting paused and said with a sneer, it's 2,900, what's the matter? Is it too much? If you feel bad that I spend money, just say it, I will earn a penny. 1 point, the big deal is that I will keep all the food and drink in the account before, and I will pay you back one by one in the future, okay? When the two are together, Tang Yi has always made more money. Gu Yanting had a lump in his heart, so Tang Yi rarely raised money. Something was wrong with Tang Yi today, and Gu Yanting also exploded a little suddenly. Tang Yi's body froze, his hand on the back of the sofa suddenly burst into blue veins, and he grabbed the sofa cover suddenly. Gu Yanting gritted his teeth and waited for Tang Yi to come and fight. Who knows that after the iron claw-like 5 fingers grabbed hard, they slowly loosened. Tang Yi did not move, but sighed softly, Yanting, are you really resisting me like that? Gu Yanting frowned and said nothing. I am dictatorial, I call your old friends, oh no, you should be called brothers. I have smashed your brothers to pieces, almost no one has any heart with you anymore, eating meat and drinking you feel lonely without you, don't you? Gu Yanting was stunned, occasionally. Gu Yanting said, why do you say this? Okay, let's not talk about this, Tang Yi paused and said after a while, then do you think that I earn more money than you, which makes you very stressed? Especially when I do, you feel ashamed when asked how much you spend. This time Gu Yanting didn't hesitate anymore, a little bit. Well, Tang Yi asked again, don't you like me interfering with you? Gu Yanting suddenly remembered that the last time the two had a big fight was for this. He had a cousin who came to invite him to dinner. Tang Yi waited until he came back in the middle of the night and questioned him for half an hour. Gu Yanting has been freewheeling for the past 20 years, and has never accommodated any lover. He felt honored that such a good person Tang Yi was with him, and he made concessions unconsciously. So sometimes, when his unrepentant rebellious heart comes together, countless grievances and grief will flow out. Gu Yanting has raised objections to these points before. Tang Yi sometimes listens to him in surprise, nods and jots down what makes sense, and sometimes acts as a hooligan and suddenly comes over and kisses Gu Yanting. Then the end result is a fight between goblins and a night of spring supper. Gu Yanting thought of the sweet scene between the two of them before, and the accumulated anger quietly went down. Tang Yi, these are easy to discuss. Gu Yanting didn't know what to say for a while. Tang Yuking sat there coldly. It didn't look like he was angry, but it didn't look like he wanted to reconcile. Gu Yanting scratched his head and opened his mouth a few times, but he didn't know where to start. Is it Lin Rui? The two were silent for more than 10 minutes. Tang Yi sighed and spoke first. What do you want to say? Gu Yanting finally found the steps, hurriedly walked to the sofa, and sat down. Lin Rui's home is too far from Zhonghui Road. If there are no seats on the road, I'm afraid his legs can't stand it. Today he said he wanted to live there, but I didn't let you go because you weren't too happy. However, can we discuss this matter? Lin Rui's leg was injured while taking Gu Yanting to the doctor. It is said that while he was watching Gu Yanting waiting for the ambulance, a car came from behind and scratched him. Gu Yanting had seen that there was a twisted scar on Lin Rui's straight and delicate calf. The 1-meter tall sofa, Tang Yi took up half of the sofa, and Gu Yanting sat down, and was blocked on the far side. Tang Yi finally raised his eyes. Phoenix eyes looked over slightly. No. Why not? Gu Yanting frowned and said anxiously, there is nothing between me and him, just an ordinary classmate, and besides, his leg was injured for me, I can't ignore it. You want to manage, Tang Yi said, can you tell you how long you plan to manage? Do you care once? For a year? Or for a lifetime? Gu Yanting was stunned for a while. Of course, help if you can. This means that as long as there is a problem with Lin Rui in this life, he will take care of it. Tang Yi stopped talking. The lighting in the living room is warm yellow. When Tang Yi went to buy the lamps, he specially changed them, saying that it is warmer and has a homey atmosphere. However, at this moment, the warm yellow light hit his handsome face, but it was faintly pale. The room was awkwardly silent for a long time. Gu Yanting felt that something was wrong, and it was too late to speak again. Because he heard it, Tang Yi sighed softly but firmly, Gu Yanting, let's break up. Gu Yanting didn't know how many times about the breakup, but it ended without a hitch. When Tang Yi opened his mouth, his first reaction was not fear, but novelty. After all, when he broke up before, Tang Yi fought him furiously at first, but probably more often later. Tang Yi was also lazy, so he lightly threw out, don't even think about it. Think 4 words to dismiss him. Gu Yanting was in shock, and there was a little inexplicable laugh and disbelief. So he didn't speak, wanting to see what a Tang Yi-style breakup would look like. After Tang Yi said this, he was silent for a while, then got up and went to the bedroom. After a while, Gu Yanting saw him move all his things in the big closet to the second bedroom. "Tick," he said, "oh, this piece of land is also owned by the young master." Tang Yi put the house in Gu Yanting's name, and finally his salary skyrocketed, and when he finally repaid all the arrears, Tang Yi put his arm around Gu Yanting's neck and said, "Baby, we won't be able to get the certificate in this life, why don't we just make do with the real estate certificate and take a wedding photo?" In the wedding photo, the two of them laughed like idiots, holding a large real estate book together. The living room has a burgundy curtain in the back and a black lacquered sideboard in the front. With a big wave of Tang Yi's hand, he also hung up with the question eternal not concentric. After the photo was developed, Gu Yanting thought it was too out of character, so he cut out the second half of the concentric Yu Yongzhe, leaving only the upper half to be embedded in the frame. Tang Yi finished moving clothes to get the frame. Gu Yanting finally smelled the real danger, and his face changed immediately. He jumped up from the sofa, knocking over a lot of things along the way, and finally when Tang Yi's hand was about to touch the brown mirror frame, he took the things and hid them behind him. "This, you can't move this." Gu Yanting was like an enemy. "Is this for real?" The decision cannot be taken away by him. Tang Yi should ask him why he can't move the frame. Then he can say we haven't broken up yet, why did you break up? Lin Rui's affairs are easy to discuss, I just treat him as a younger brother. Gu Yanting felt that his IQ at this time was beyond the table. He stood up straight, walked twice in his stomach, stared closely at Tang Yi, and waited for him to speak. Tang Yi rubbed his eyebrows and opened his mouth. "I don't care, you can keep this thing if you want, or throw it away. It's just that I have to put my things in the second bedroom. I'm afraid that people who shouldn't come here will come back here. See trouble." Gu Yanting. "The ownership of this house is yours, but at least I still have the right to use the second bedroom. Let's get together. If you bring someone back later," Tang Yi pointed to Gu Yanting the frame on the back, "don't forget this should be face down, or it will stain my eyes." Gu Yanting. "Tang Yi, I'm leaving." Tang Yi brought a mobile phone and wallet, a coat, and went out of the house like this. Gu Yanting sneered and roared at the beginning tonight. He stayed there like an idiot and didn't move. Not a single word of the high-level belly draft came out. The whole person is like being struck by lightning. In fact, I don't patronize Yanting. Cao Fat received a call in the middle of the night, and almost flew out the phone. Break up?" Sister-in-law said. Cao Fatty roared without restraint for a long time, and finally said faintly, "Boss, you are teasing me in the middle of the night." Gu Yanting kicked the coffee table irritably. "I'm full, I'm teasing you. I just got home and I don't know anything, so he came here and gave him. I'm totally stunned." Gu Yanting's senses finally returned to his original position, and he roared in exasperation, "Fucking to break up with Lao Tzu. Break up? Yes, the points are divided." Cao Fat also shouted, "Anyway, my boss wanted to divide." Fart. Gu Yanting was angry. Cao Fatty closed his mouth and said nothing. Gu Yanting closed his eyes and stopped talking. Half a sound, Cao Fatty sighed and asked, "Boss, do you still have love for Lin Rui?" Gu Yanting was suffocated by this sentence, and hummed for a long time, not knowing whether to say yes or no. Speaking of his heart, how could he forget someone he had loved for 4 years wholeheartedly? In the 3 years he and Tang Yi have been together, although he has not seen other little boys, he still has a lot of daydreams. For example, when Gu Yanting turned into a handsome man, Lin Rui cried and begged him to be with him. But Gu Yanting is also clear that this is an obsession. How good it is in the heart, how bad it is when it is taken out. For example, in a dream you read there is a fish in the north, its name is Kun. Kun is the big, and then the reality tells you, you can feed thousands of people by making grilled fish, slightly spicy, no onions, cilantro is the same. Tang Yi is his reality, ups and downs. Lin Rui is the fish in his dream, how big it is. Today, Tang Yi was going to break up. In addition to being surprised, Gu Yanting was also a little embarrassed after being exposed. "I don't know either, but, I really didn't think about separating from Tang Yi." Gu Yanting deflated like a punctured balloon. "Fatty, I'm going to Hangzhou for a business trip tomorrow, leave the key with you." Cao Fat, "Oh, why are you going out again?" "The company arranged, I happen to be quiet." Gu Yanting said weakly, you help me, take care of your sister-in-law. Sao Fat. Tang Yi is a person who makes them feel guilty when they smoke a cigarette, whereas he needed to care. You want me to look at my sister-in-law? Sao Fatty shook his head a little unkindly, and sighed, my sister-in-law is so good, someone really starts, how can I be an ordinary human to stop it? Boss, you can't be so unrighteous, in case if my sister-in-law found out that I was following, maybe you have to go to the moat to catch me when you come back. I fish, Gu Yanting paused and said, the brothers died together. Sao Fatty took a sip of water and choked it out of her nose. Well, what else to say, just die. Sao Fatty thought a little, Tang Yi, you must be merciful. Gu Yanting is a popular figure in the school, but in fact he is very straightforward and has no heart. Later, Lin Rui became a well-known in the school. Gu Yanting followed Lin Rui every day, and he was also involved in various rumors. Gu Yanting was stupid and didn't realize it, and felt that the friends around him were always so good to him. In fact, Cao Pang has heard many people bury him behind his back, gay, ass, selling chrysanthemum, how ugly it is. Gu Yanting met Tang Yi later. Afterwards, those who gossip are far away. Although he couldn't avoid saying something behind his back, he didn't dare to coax something from Gu Yanting's hands. Since then, Sao Fat has been a little afraid of Tang Yi. Tisk, Tang Yi kicked the boss. Sao Fat hung up the phone and thought in a daze. When I was about to fall asleep, another 5 big characters popped out. How could it be shouting? Tang Yi's behavior of sneaking out of the hospital without permission was finally condemned by the nurses. He made a righteous promise, saying that he would never sneak out next time. Even if he went out, he would definitely ask for leave, but the next day he received a fatal serial call from Soy Milk. Soy Milk is a little boy, who is very cute and has a big head. His original name was Wei, and Soy Milk was the nickname Tang Yi gave him. Tang Yi also had a relationship with this child. The first time was to go to the mall to discuss cooperation. He saw a dumpling wrapped in a red padded jacket standing in the crowd, staring blankly in the crowd. Tang Yi used to take someone to the service center and left when the service desk was sure to find his mother. 6 months later, he was eating at Yulong Pavilion, and ran into this child again, pouting, and stomping at the door with hazy eyes. Later, Tang Yi and him became friends with each other and met the unreliable mother of the child. The child's mother saw that he was handsome and was in a high-end consumer place, and immediately decided that Tang Yi was not a liar, and let the child eat and drink with Tang Yi. Occasionally the child thinks of Tang Yi, as long as Tang Yi is free, his mother immediately kicks the child out without saying a word. Tang Susu, can you come out? Soy Milk's voice was crying, shall we meet at the old place? Soy Milk is unreliable, but Soy Milk is very sensible. Generally, when contacting Tang Yi, it is to send a message. To ask hello is to miss him. Not all Tang Yi agreed, and half of the 10 times he went to the appointment. Today the child was on the phone as if he was dying. Tang Yi's first reaction was, something happened. I'm free, where are you now with Soy Milk? Stay still, uncle will find you. Tang Yi grabbed the mobile phone and went to the nurse to ask for leave. The nurse rolled her eyes silently, and at least gave him the approval. The old place that Soy Milk said was a small park, where Tang Yi took him out to play for the first time. When Tang Yi arrived by taxi, the little guy was sitting on the bench with a newspaper. Tang Yi smiled helplessly, and when he came to the front, only to find the little guy crying, seeing Tang Yi's tall shadow covering him, he threw the newspaper on the other hand, with a wow, he hugged Tang Yi's leg and cried. It really happened. His eyes were red, and his long eyelashes were wet with tears and tangled together. Tang Yi wiped the sweat from his forehead with his hands, and when he stopped crying, he sighed, What's the matter? Do you have something to tell my uncle? The Soy Milk shriveled her mouth and her eyes were red again. Dear, it's good to cry and vent when you are wronged. But you can't stop, right? Otherwise, the big monster will come and you will cry and cry all the time. Who will call Ultraman? Yet. Soy Milk wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'll call Ultraman and beat them. Tang Yi nodded, smiled, and squeezed the bulging cheeks of Soy Milk. Who are they? My father. Soy Milk clutched Tang Yi's clothes tightly, as if he was afraid that he would run away. Tears filled his eyes as black as obsidian. Mom said, Dad is going to take me away, so I won't be with her anymore. The mother of Soy Milk is a very unreliable woman. Tang Yi felt that he would not be able to have children in his life, so he had a special softness towards children. Sometimes he negotiates with a team, and when he sees the other party brings a child or talks about the child's tender face, he will be a little merciful. In his opinion, the mother of Soy Milk is really not a good mother. She repeatedly left the child aside for shopping or dating a man, and often let the child go out to buy things or come out to find him. Small parks like today, in case someone has a crooked idea, the Soy Milk will be lost. Tang Yi sighed, do you still like to be with your mother? Neither. Children's emotions come and go quickly. Tang Yi sat on the bench and took him in his arms, and he was happy. I don't know much. Soy Milk bit her lip and whispered, Mom is going to have a new dad. A new dad. A new mom, right? What he said was a bit tongue-in-cheek, but the meaning was clear. When the Soy Milk mother was dating her boyfriend, she might not have been troubled by his burden. Although children are small, they are particularly sensitive to the emotional perception of adults. Soy Milk knew that she was in the way with her mother, so she was naturally worried, and was labeled as a oil bottle by her father, who had never been masked. Tang Yi felt a pain in his heart, and rubbed Soy Milk's head. It's okay, there is an uncle. Well, Soy Milk nodded fiercely, if only Susu could be a father. Soy Milk is good. Tang Yi leads him to walk along the park. As he walked, he taught him the names of the flowers and trees twice. After 2 laps, Soy Milk's small phone rang. Wai Wei, you're dead. Hey, it's Mr. Tang. A woman smirked and said, I'll tell you, Wai Wei must be looking for you. His dad still doesn't believe it. Tang Yi took the phone and frowned, well, Wai Wei is by my side. Hey, that's it. Vivi's father came to pick him up. As soon as we arrived at the restaurant, the kid disappeared while we were parking. He almost killed me. That, Mr. Tang. The woman coughed lightly, can I trouble you to do good deeds to the end and send the child over? Soy Milk clutched Tang Yi's clothes tightly when she thought about it on the phone, like an injured deer. Tang Yi glanced at him and sighed, okay. Tang Yi held Soy Milk's little hand all the way. Soy Milk couldn't help crying again, but the child was also sensible, and followed Tang Yi out while crying. Soy Milk, listen to me. Tang Yi saw that he was about to go somewhere, and reached out to wipe away the Soy Milk's tears. Uncle will sit there and wait for you in a while, don't be afraid, okay? Uncle is with you. Soy Milk bit her lip and nodded, crying almost out of breath. This kid's mother definitely doesn't want him anymore. As for his dad, I haven't seen each other for 3 years, I'm afraid it's hard to say. If, Tang Yi hesitated, if they don't want you, Uncle will want you too, okay? Soy Milk froze for a moment, then her eyes lit up. Tang Yi led him to the restaurant that the woman said. When he reached the 3rd floor, he found a position facing the stairs, then let go of Soy Milk and followed the waiter. To his surprise, the Soy Milk came back happily in less than 10 minutes. Susu, I'm back. There were still tears on the child's face, but the swollen eyes couldn't find the smile now. My parents don't want me, let's go. Tang Yi, where's your dad? It's right behind. Soy Milk happily took his hand, my dad is so good at talking. I said someone wanted me, and he agreed. Tang Yi was stunned for a while, then raised his head, he saw a cold and handsome face that appeared at the annual meeting every year. Mr. Zhou. Tang Yi took soy milk into a Hummer parked at the entrance of the restaurant 5 minutes later, and then a woman happily waved to them and drove away in a Mini. "It's over, boss. My sister-in-law was picked up by a sweaty horse. The man in front is very similar to you." "No. He's more handsome than you." Gu Yanting was on the construction site. After he took out the content from the exclamation mark of the fat man, it exploded immediately, and he dialed it without thinking. "What horse? Did Tang Yi go to the racecourse?" Cao Fatty was so enraged by this bull-headed remark, he was heartbroken. "Hummer. Car. Boss, let's not be ashamed, okay?" Gu Yanting was stunned. "Car? What do you mean?" Cao Fatty gave a complete description of what happened today when he saw Tang Yi with a man and a child. "Gu Yanting, what the are you pretending to be? Driving a Hummer in an urban area is either a coal digger or a nouveau riche. The idiot must have never even been out of the urban area, right? This kind of person is uncertain. Somebody from the urban-rural junction, maybe hit a Phaeton on the road and take someone as a Passat and say that Lao Tzu can beat you 10, you hit it and try." Cao Fat can't listen anymore. "Gu Yanting. Gu Yanting, I'll go buy a plane ticket and wait. The author has something to say." Small theatre. "Gu Yanting, daughter-in-law, what animal do you like?" "Tang Yi, horse." Gu Yanting, angrily, "Damn you, are you not finished yet? Are you still thinking about that kid? What's so great about a broken Hummer Yuan, and * Tang Yi, horse, herbivore, mammalia, odd hoof." Gu Yanting, _ "Oh, I like it too. Tang Yi." Gu Yanting, "I also like donkeys. Tang Yi, go." Gu Yanting's idea of buying a ticket and going back eventually came to nothing. He called for leave on the front foot, but there was a problem with the back foot project. Their company specializes in interior design. This project was introduced by an old client. Gu Yanting worked in the company for 3 years. The manager wanted to train him, so he asked him to bring the team over by himself. It's a chance to give him a chance to practice. Gu Yanting came with great ambitions. Who would have guessed that within a day, the project client would change his mind, expressing dissatisfaction with their design and requiring a change of team. Gu Yanting can only push back the things he went back to, and first bring his assistant to coordinate with the other party. For a while, he couldn't care whether Tang Yi was in Mali or on a donkey. After several calls and no one answered, I could only frown and send a text message. Gu Yanting was busy over there, and Tang Yi had a hard time. Soy Milk was originally called Zhou Weiwei, and his father was Zhou Hao, who was driving in front. Zhou Hao is Tang Yi's immediate boss and a member of ER's board of directors. However, Tang Yi works at the ER branch in T-City, and usually meets with such a big boss no more than 3 times a year. What's more, every time he goes to the meeting as the department manager of the branch, he can only sit in the second lap far away. The inner circle is the company's top management. During the meeting, they don't look sideways, and they don't even look at a subordinate like Tang Yi. So Tang Yi faintly regretted the sentence Mr. Zhou that he blurted out. After all, from Zhou Hao's puzzled look in the restaurant, he quickly understood that Zhou Hao didn't recognize him, or that he didn't recognize him at all. And his name not only reported his family, but also showed another unhappy thing. He took care of the big boss's house Soy Milk. Oh no, it should be Zhou Weiwei's young master, who is begging for both hard and soft to go with him. Tang Yi sighed silently in the back seat, but his face was still calm. Zhou Hao obviously came to pick up his son, and a child seat was installed in the back. Zhou Weiwei sat inside, his little hand still hooking Tang Yi's little finger. Timidly and curiously, he occasionally looked at Zhou Hao. Although Zhou Hao looked unhappy, he still politely communicated with Zhou Weiwei. Is your name Weiwei? Zhou Hao glanced behind him from the rear-view mirror, his eyes stopped for half a second on Tang Yi's caught little finger, and then moved away. Zhou Weiwei nodded solemnly, yes, Dad. Tang Yi. It's too natural for a child to call his father, just like calling his uncle and aunt, he just opens his mouth. Tang Yi frowned, feeling that Zhou Weiwei's behavior was very cooperative, and even a little weird to please Zhou Hao. Zhou Hao unknowingly made a hum from his nose. After a few minutes, Zhou Hakai said again, I didn't know your mother gave birth to you before, and she didn't notify me, so it was a little late. Tang Yin's phoenix pupils behind his eyes froze, he turned his face calmly, and looked at Zhou Weiwei. 3 years, is this too late? It seems that the boss is very unkind, and what he said sounds like an apology, but thinking about it carefully, he puts the blame on the woman. It's okay, Dad. Tang Yi. Zhou Hao nodded again with satisfaction, and suddenly asked, do you have another name, soybean milk? Zhou Weiwei was stunned for a moment, then looked at Tang Yi, well. Before Zhou Weiwei's father came out next week, Zhou Hao looked directly at Tang Yi from the rearview mirror with a half-smile. Black beans or soybeans? Zhou Weiwei was a little confused, and looked at Tang Yi with a blank face, obviously not understanding his father's problem. Actually, Tang Yi looked gentle and honest, but he was also detrimental. For example, he called Weiwei soybean milk, not only because the advertisement was too brainwashed, but also because Zhou Weiwei's unreliable mother was a little black. Black is simple, black is thorough. When I saw Zhou Hao just now, Tang Yi was surprised, but at the same time he didn't forget to name the pair of parents' coffee milk. Zhou Hao stared at Tang Yi from the rear-view mirror, his gaze was a little hot, and when it was refracted by the rear-view mirror, it was extremely lethal. If he can open his mouth, he can stab at the center of the problem, and Tang Yi has no chance to hide it. Zhou Hao raised his eyebrows. Zhou Weiwei was stunned for a while, then turned his head, I'm not black. Tang Yi. Zhou Weiwei, I'm numb and black. Zhou Hao drove all the way to a suburban house with the corners of his mouth raised. Tang Yi took the child down, sent it to the entrance, and turned to leave. At the beginning, soy milk held him and he had no choice but to help coax the child over. But now, seeing the two men chatting about Ultraman and the little monster, Tang Yi knew that the bloodline thing had started to work. Zhou Weiwei got out of the car and gathered up his little jacket. Tang Yi let go of his hand and motioned Zhou Hao to take the child over. Mr. Zhou, I'll take my leave first. Seeing that Zhou Hao didn't respond, Tang Yi could only remind him. Zhou Hao walked in front of him for a while, looked back at him in surprise, are you going? Tang Yi blinked, not quite understanding. Zhou Hao then glanced at Zhou Weiwei again, Tang Yi frowned, and heard Zhou Weiwei cry with a wow, Susu lied to me. Susu said he was with me. In the beginning, the child did thunder and no rain, but then he really cried, Susu, I'm afraid. Would you like to accompany me, just once? Zhou Hao also frowned and said, the child is not familiar with me, please trouble Mr. Tang. Tang Yi is neither stupid nor stupid, at a glance, I know that the two men have reached a united front. Some were dumbfounded. Tang Yi grew up eating hundreds of restaurants, and has become accustomed to being a guest at other people's homes. Zhou Hao was obviously inexperienced in dealing with children, so after explaining the room and other places that Tang Yi might use, he went into the study on his own. I waited until Tang Yi woke up the next day to say goodbye, but I didn't see Zhou Hao. Fortunately, a nanny came to the house. Tang Yi explained Zhou Weiwei's usual preferences to the nanny. On the way back to the hospital, he found that his mobile phone had long been dead. When he returned to the hospital and was caught by the little nurse, he turned on the phone slowly and saw the text message Gu Yanting sent last night. Don't run around, it's not safe outside, eat well. Tang Yi. This text message made him speechless for a long time. Tang Yi tapped on the screen with his fingers, and just typed 2 letters before pressing the delete key. Autumn Tiger launched Yu Wei these 2 days. Tang Yi changed himself to a single room yesterday, and also chose a sunny ward because of his good relationship with the medical staff. At this moment, the noon sun hit him unscrupulously, and the golden light shone on him. After he took off his glasses, the phoenix eyes that were exposed were drawn with majesty, and the fine long eyebrows were lit up. Tang Yi put the phone aside and slowly closed his eyes. He and Gu Yanting said that the breakup was serious, but the latter's understanding of this was obviously not on the same level as his. Tang Yi could even imagine that when he left, Gu Yanting could call his brothers in surprise. "Hey, Tang Yi told me to break up." Strange, right? Gee, that's weird. Actually, Tang Yi couldn't tell. The conflict between him and Gu Yanting was irreconcilable, whether it was because of their incompatibility or because of Lin Rui's stab in the bone. When Tang Yugong and Gu Yanting were together, they were both fresh graduates. Gu Yanting was driven by the economic gap between him and Lin Rui to go into a rage. Later Gu's father and Gu's mother put together hundreds of thousands of dollars for him. Tang Yi accompanied him home to get the money. The money was cut off. That was the first time he intervened in Gu Yanting's affairs. The money was returned to Gu's father. Gu's father was obviously relieved, but he was worried that his son would resent him because of it. The son has nothing to do. So Tang Yi found his friend again, put Gu Yanting into a design company, and asked his friend to draw a big cake for him. The main idea is to tell Gu Yanting how easy and comfortable this is, what a good job with money. That was the second time he intervened in Gu Yanting's affairs. Gu Yanting is not without complaints about this, but he is a wild horse, but he does not know why he repeatedly compromises with Tang Yi. On the avenue, Tang Yi was very satisfied with this for a while, even a little proud. Until one time, he accidentally saw an email from Gu Yanting. The recipient is Lin Rui. The content is very sensational, and the general summary is, "Why don't you answer the phone? Hey, do you need me somewhere? If you have it, just say it straight, Mr. I am working now, I can afford a lot of things, and I will give you what you want. Have you made a boyfriend yet? I do have one, but it's too much control, he's everywhere, it's annoying. I don't like him, so I really want to finish it as soon as possible." The last two sentences were like a hot slap, and slapped Tang Yi's self-righteous face. Since then, these 10 words have been branded over and over in his mind. Come and go, no peace. When was that? By the way, that was the day after they took the wedding photo. It's a bit ironic when I think about it now. A person with a character like Tang Yi is almost a scheming person, and he will pay for it. However, he tolerated Gu Yanting carrying a knife and poking holes in his heart. Every poke is accurate. He has endured hardships that his peers never thought about since he was a child, and it is inevitable that he is a little paranoid. However, he also received great kindness from the society, whether it was the kind and honest villager neighbors, or the teacher who secretly subsidized him every time he went to school, and earnestly encouraged his classmates. All of them allowed him to grow up unscrupulously and at the same time keep the bottom of his heart. The truest kindness. So when Tang Yi felt that his heart was shattered by a word, he was far less sharp than the razor-sharp decision in the shopping mall. He sighed and began to persuade himself, "Forget it, Tang Yi, why bother hanging your heart on someone's neck, making people feel fishy?" He has always been in a good mood, and he hesitated over and over again on the matter of breaking up. Sometimes he heard Gu Yanting making phone calls to the other side of the ocean with jet lag. However, sometimes seeing Gu Yanting smirking unguardedly at him, with his own reflection in his deep eyes, he would feel that breaking up was a fool's errand compared to the small 3 around him who were on and off. Little 4, Gu Yanting is not even considered a mental infidel. Tang Yi doesn't want to be too aggressive. Sometimes he thinks that time may dilute everything, but time can't dilute it. If Lin Rui changes, maybe Gu Yanting doesn't like him. So he knew that Lin Rui had dated several men at the same time, knew his poor performance in school, and when he knew about his money worship and promiscuity, he tested Gu Yanting's opinion. The latter, however, showed unexpected understanding and sympathy. His family situation is a bit complicated. Gu Yanting was full of distress and guilt at the time. In such a family, it's really distressing. It's not easy for him. Tang Yi answered sarcastically, live in a pigsty and cry all over yourself. Gu Yanting frowned. After Lin Rui came back, he proved with his own actions that he really did not dislike Lin Ruzao, and he was happy with it. Tang Yi's days off will soon pass. He didn't know how to respond to Gu Yanting, so he put it aside and didn't reply. Gu Yanting kept the same silence. However, there are a lot of things in the company. As soon as the weekend came, Assistant Xiao Yang called him. Manager Tang, on the 11th, our company organized a study at the headquarters, and it was notified that all the management should participate. I sent the schedule to your mailbox, you can see what day I set for you. Is the flight right? ER has a wide variety of benefits. At least 2 trips are organized every year, and the name is learning. For example, the study on the 11th is the accommodation arranged from 9.28 to 9.30. The meeting is only open for half a day on the morning of the 29th. Their head office is registered in Haikou. Although most of them have moved to Shanghai after they have grown, the general meeting is still arranged in Haikou. Hotels and air tickets will be reimbursed, but I will go wherever there is nothing wrong. As long as it was not a formal meeting before Tang Yi, it was all excuses. Because he is the fastest climber among the various branches of ER. In the past 2 years, there has been a tendency for ER to be assigned to stand. If he shows up in such casual occasions, it is easy to be pulled to stand in line. Standing in line is too subtle, sometimes just a glance or an excuse will be overinterpreted by the other party, and then you will be labeled as enemy or me. If you stay neutral, you will be offended by both sides. Tang Yi might as well be forced to participate this time, frowned, and said to Xiao Yang, let me see. Xiao Yang responded and sent a list of the participants. At the end, he ran into some corner and told Tang Yi somewhat mysteriously, Manager Tang, that Deputy Manager Lin has come to work. Tang Yi said, Hey. Xiao Yang paused slightly and explained, as soon as he came, he asked me to be an assistant, saying that anyway, since you are not here, the company hasn't given him a new one, so why don't he use me first? Tang Yi chuckled, then what? I'll go, Xiao Yang said, but when I scanned the document, I accidentally scanned a few more copies, and then sent it to your mailbox, which is the one you gave me last time, private email to send photos. When Xiao Yang was just working, he felt that it was a good idea to join the ER as an assistant. The young man boasted a few words when he was gathering with his friends. Once Tang Yi went to work, he ran into 2 girls who wanted to go in and look for Xiao Yang. The company stipulates that during working hours, except for the general manager, others are not allowed to receive private visitors. The 2 girls were stopped at the front desk, their faces turned red with embarrassment. Tang Yi smiled and relieved them, took a photo of them with the ER company logo, and praised Xiao Yang a few words on the way, and encouraged the little girl. Personal mailboxes were left at that time. Xiao Yang was still a little nervous. Manager Tang, I don't know if this will work. If you're wrong, just scold me. Tang Yi sighed softly, well, don't do this in the future, just work hard, don't worry about such things in the future. He was silent for a while, and said, it's not good for you. Tang Yi had never participated in the standing team before, and now he was stabbed, but he still didn't know who took him as a thorn in the side. The first strike is strong and then the attack suffers. He cannot move, but he cannot be passive. Xiao Yang helped him a lot this time, but he also committed a major taboo in the workplace. Xiao Yang repeatedly agreed, well, thank you Manager Tang. The flight ticket was still scheduled for the morning of the 28th. Tang Yi simply packed a few clothes and set foot on the plane for a business trip. The company arranged for them all standard rooms, 1 for 2. Before, Tang Yi and Ning Xiao were both in the same room. They were both managers of the marketing department. They were in charge of the first and second departments. However, when he arrived at the hotel this time, he found that the name of the room with him was blank on the schedule. Tang Yi squinted and greeted the female employee who handled the registration, "Help me find out who else lives in 2408. Okay, wait a moment." The keyboard tapped twice, saying what Tang Yi didn't want to hear. "It's Lin Rulin, the deputy manager of T-City." The person in charge of arranging the check-in had met Tang Yi a few times, and with a smile, he stuck his head out from behind the computer and said, "The hotel tonight is on the company's side, tomorrow morning's meeting at 8 o'clock, after about 12 o'clock, everyone will go to Sanya together." Tang Yi is not interested in Sanya and Siya at all, and now he has to consider the issue of accommodation at night. Lin Rui hadn't had direct contact with him since he returned to China, and the only communication between the two was "I want to live for a while," conveyed by Gu Yanting. Tang Yi's phrase "where did you go?" was not just talking. He broke up with Gu Yanting that day, and then moved his belongings to the second bedroom and locked it. Small two-bedroom, not even a study. Gu Yanting only cared about the accident at the beginning, and he must not have realized that Tang Yi had cut off the possibility of Lin Rui taking the opportunity to live in the past. Unless Gu Yanting and Lin Rui shamelessly live in the same bed. But according to Tang Yi's understanding of these two people, this is temporarily impossible. Gu Yanting was still thinking that he didn't feel sorry for himself, and Lin Rui was used to playing with his lover under the guise of being innocent. The two of them are stupid and sane, and they can't get together so quickly to teach others. Tang Yi is a typical temperament that I can't live well and can't be cheap to others. It's just that his stomach pain has finally subsided in the past few days. So he picked up the pen and turned to the sign-in form on the other side, "I have a relative here, and the accommodation will be settled by myself." "Has the meeting arrangement changed?" The person in charge was stunned for a moment. "Not yet." "Okay, then if there are any changes, please contact me through this number." Tang Yi put down his pen, raised his eyes and smiled sincerely at the person in charge. "I'll cause you trouble." Already? It was just about October, and the tourism here became hot. Tang Yi dragged his suitcase for a while, but didn't see anything he liked, and finally stopped in front of a hotel. There are relatives around. Tang Yi used it when he was on a business trip for the first time. At that time, he had just joined the company, and when he went on a business trip, he was arranged in a room with a colleague who was completely unfamiliar. He knows that the attitude of many people towards homosexuality in the society is not extreme, but it is not so friendly. For example, being in the same room with a will feel coveted, and taking a bath with a will feel that you are being lewd. He struggled for a long time, and finally lied to the leader that I had relatives nearby, so I would not delay seeing clients. It's just that he didn't have much money at the time, so he wanted to break 3 petals in order to repay the loan, so he kept wandering outside until midnight, only to find a family in the red light district for 25 yuan a night bed. Ning Zihu found him later and dragged Tang Yi, who had dark circles under his eyes to his chin, to his room. Ning Zihu was open and honest, saying that he didn't mind whether Tang Yi was curved or straight, and he didn't mean to explore Tang Yi. Just 2 beds in one room, everyone chatted and slept, that's it. Since then, the combination of the two has never been dismantled. Even if the company arranges other people, Comrade Ning might as well carry the luggage and kick the people out of Tang Yi's house. Tang Yi had settled in the hotel before he remembered this. However, when he took out his mobile phone from his clothes, he realized that the mobile phone had not been turned on since he got off the plane. Tang Yi opened one, just in time to open Ning Zihu's letter. "Tang Yi, what's the room number?" "Next, come over here, Xiao Yang has with a pheasant." Yeji is the nickname given to Lin Rui by Ning Zihu, implying that after he graduated from college, Yeji became the deputy manager. Irrefutable evidence. Lin Rui parachuted down and blocked the way of many people. In the past few days, he began to adjust the staffing of the second department. When Tang Yi arrived at the hotel, he saw Ning Xiu holding a bottle of mineral water and sitting on the sofa in the lounge area with Erlang's legs crossed. In the lobby, there are 2 or 3 foreign tourists, and there is no shadow of Xiao Yang and Lin Rui. Tang Yi frowned slightly and sat next to Ning Xiu. What's going on? No, Xiao Yang is venting my anger. Ning Xiu's calm voice carried a smile. This child is really good, protector. Tang Yi glanced at him blankly and said nothing. You moved out. Ning Xiu turned to ask him, standard room or double room? Is there any place for me? No. Tisk, how cruel. I just wanted to kick Ren Xiaolin out just to defend my territory. Ning Xiu pretended to sigh and explained the situation just now. Just now Lin Rui asked Xiao Yang to help him with his luggage, and Xiao Yang asked the front desk where you live. The front desk said you live with relatives. Then Lin Rui snorted and said that Tang was always an orphan. Where did he come from relatives? Could it be that he doesn't want to share a room with me? In the second half of the sentence, Ning Xiu shouted at his throat, in a soft voice, but he really looked like Lin Rui. Tang Yi smiled speechlessly, then raised his chin, then what? Then Xiao Yang said, otherwise, Deputy Manager Lin, you can change with Manager Ning. Tang Yi. Ning Xiu, what a good boy. Lin Rui's face was black at that time, and he could be an undercover agent in the coal pile. Don't argue with Lin Rui, Tang Yi rubbed his brows, I feel like he's coming for me. And he has a lot of power behind him. Ning Xiu's eyes widened in surprise. You know him? It's not acquaintance, it's just a little bit of intersection in the circle of friends. Tang Yi didn't talk deeply. Ning Xiu is a smart man, knowing that his prompt is well-intentioned, and will not ask him too much about his personal matters. Lin Rui was airborne to their company and their department. Although Tang Yi had no evidence, he intuitively felt that Lin Rui was coming for him, and the people who came were not good. He has nothing to fear, he is naked and has nothing to worry about, and the only weakness in his body is Gu Yanting. Tang Yi couldn't deny this, Gu Yanting was his weakness, even if he was angry with him and hated him, he didn't want him to be wronged by others. And Lin Rui probably also knows this very well. It is difficult to say whether he will use Gu Yanting at that time. Tang Yi hesitated for a moment, but still said to Ning Xiu, the company has made a big move this year. Not to mention the acquisition of 2 small companies, I heard that it also intends to enter the film and television industry. This does not seem like an old director's style. Ning Xiu looked a little solemn and looked over. Tang Yi smiled, started with financial and management software. Although it has been developing well, some application markets are now saturated, and the continuous acquisitions at home and abroad have also led to constant brand concentration. Decline. At this time, most of the old directors will consider changes. Tang Yi tapped his knees lightly, raised his eyes and said, but the new director, not necessarily. ER's financial status is good, and its organizational structure is bound to be changed. If a new leader with enough voice and great ambition comes in, ER may change careers from now on, and shift the business center step by step. It's just a matter of a few words. Ning Xiu took a sip from the bottle, nodded, and suddenly said, behind Lin Rui is Zhou Hao. Tang Yi froze for a moment. He hasn't read the email Xiao Yang sent him, but the content that Xiao Yang can touch will definitely not be very direct. The person behind Lin Rui needs his own analysis and inference step by step. Ning Xiu told the news, he saved trouble. But Zhou Hao, Tang Yi's mind showed 2 figures, one big and one small. How did Zhou Hao meet Lin Rui? Support him? Let's go with the flow. Tang Yi thought about it, and said, Xiao Yang, take care of yourself, this child is honest. Hey, I can't control it, Ren Xiao Yang is serious. Ning Xiu was surprised, are you hiding from Lin Rui? No, Tang Yi said calmly, I just don't want to see you. Tang Yi didn't like seeing Lin Rui, but that didn't mean the latter didn't want to see him. The hotel issued meal coupons to all the participants, all 3 meals a day were buffets. Ning Ziyu finally called Tang Yi and went to the restaurant together. Not long after sitting down, Lin Rui greeted him with a surprised face. Lin Rui is really handsome, with delicate eyebrows and eyes like a snow doll. Even if he doesn't like his Tang Yi from the bottom of his heart, he has to admit that when Lin Rui's clear and innocent peach blossom eyes looked over, is indeed very able to impress men's hearts. Hey, Manager Tang, you are here. What a coincidence. Lin Rui had already taken a lot of things. Seeing that there was still a place next to Ning Ziyu, he put his things down and sat down. Can I talk to you? Ning Ziyu frowned, but Tang Yi nodded lightly and let him go first. Manager Tang, when I returned to China that day, I didn't notice that you were among the friends who received the wind. I'm really sorry for being neglected that day. Lin Rui raised his head and said with a smile, this is also a strange statement. Ting, he is like this, stupid, and he doesn't know how to introduce you to me. By the way, will you be okay when you go back that day? Tang Yi had a decent smile on his face, and said quite a bit of a gentleman, it's okay. Ah, that's good. Lin Rui patted his chest lightly, heaving a sigh of relief. I wanted to go to your house for a while, see if you don't agree. I thought Brother Tang didn't like me. Tang Yi smiled and nodded, I don't like it. Lin Rui. Lin Rui probably didn't expect that he had changed Manager Tang to Brother Tang. Tang Yi smiled again, and the final answer was this. He smiled for a while, and then coughed shyly, Manager Tang, you are really interesting. Tang Yi ignored him, picked up the cup and took a sip. Although there are some things that don't need to be said, as a good friend of Yanting, I can't help but want to say something. Lin Rui adjusted his emotions, Yanting is my good friend. Friends, although he stayed at my house for the night, nothing happened to us. He is a good person, but he is stupid. If he does something and you are unhappy, don't know him in the same way, okay? If the person on the opposite side was not Gu Yanting's secret crush, and the latter enjoyed Gu Yanting's special care with a natural look, Tang Yi couldn't help but applaud. It is thoughtful, sincere, and true. Tang Yi glanced at him sideways, and wanted to laugh, very good, then what? It's nothing, I can rest assured that you are all right. Lin Rui lowered his head, with an uneasy smile on his face, I think you don't want to be in the same room with me today. I thought what happened between you? Tang Yi raised his eyebrows and suddenly smiled, something happened. Lin Rui froze for a moment, hey. Tang Yi reached out and pushed the frame of the mirror, with a smile on the corner of his mouth, too many things have happened between us, I don't know which one you want to listen to, For example, I put Gu Yanting, is it crippled? Yanting is good everywhere, but it's too much tossing. He even mentioned you that day. Tang Yi squinted, swiped up and down Lin Rui's body a few times, and clicked his tongue, say you read countless people and understand people's clothes. The smile on Lin Rui's face froze. Tang Yi smiled, by the way, Deputy Manager Lin has been on the job for a few days, don't forget to give me this week's work report before 8:30 tomorrow morning. According to the regulations of the marketing department, the deputy manager has no assistant. Xiao Yang's salary and bonus these days can only be deducted from the salary of deputy manager Lin this month. Of course. Tang Yi raised his eyebrows, it's better to do less of such a thing than you can do. Tang Yi didn't screw Ning Ziyu after dinner, so he could only take the latter to the hotel where he lived for a visit. The latter's eyes lit up when he saw the other bed in the standard room, and he lay down on the bed and left without saying anything. Tang Yi stretched out and kicked him with a headache, and after a few kicks, he received a call from Gu Yanting. The two broke up for a few days, and this was the first time Tang Yi received a call from Gu Yanting. It happened once before, and he missed the shutdown. Tang Yi's eyes fell on the phone, and he cut off expressionlessly. Gu Yanting fights again, he hangs again. After doing this more than a dozen times, Comrade Ning felt something was wrong, and Gu Yanting stopped the offensive. He stopped calling and sent a text message instead. My parents miss you. Yesterday, they came all the way from their hometown and brought you your favorite pickles. Go back. I persuaded them, but I did not persuade them. Are you coming to eat? Where are you? I'll pick you up, just have a meal. Tang Yi read them one by one, scolding Gu Yanting for being extremely shameless, and even using his parents as a shield to want to make a mess. On the other side, he couldn't bear the disappointment and sadness of the second old man from the bottom of his heart. Gu's father and Gu's mother have treated him like a godson since he blocked Gu Yanting's troubles. It was a kind of family affection that was almost a luxury for Tang Yi. Sometimes he would feel a little guilty towards the second elders. They didn't know Gu Yanting's sexual orientation, and every time he complained to Tang Yi that Gu Yanting didn't know how to marry a daughter-in-law and start a family, Tang Yi felt a kind of sadness condemned by his conscience. So he checked a lot of things about looking for lala-shaped marriage, surrogacy, and IVF. Tang Yi thought of the longing look in the second old man's eyes, and hesitated for a long time. Just when he was about to send the text message "I'll be back the day after tomorrow," he suddenly remembered something, paused, and called Gu Yanting directly. It's pretty fast over there. How are you recently? Tang Yi asked. Gu Yanting was simply flattered, and repeatedly replied, okay, pretty good. It's been cold recently, so wear 2 more coats. Tang Yi said lightly, if you forget to bring them, go to Hangzhou Tower and buy 2. Oh, no, our construction site is a little far from there, not in the same district. Gu Yanting laughed, you're fine too. Tang Yi sneered, okay, how good. Your parents are here, and they're bringing pickles and frying them for me. Tang Yi simply hung up the phone. Gu Yanting's ability to lie still hasn't improved. He uncovered the top layer of skin, and the bottom was exposed like a sieve, and he couldn't hold it in his pockets. Are your parents gone? I'm still waiting to make a meal and watch him eat it. Gu Yanting has been in Hangzhou and hasn't gone back. This panic is really nonsense. The point is, I almost believed it. Tang Yi threw his mobile phone on the bed, and then stepped down without any scruples. Fuck. Ning Zihu was kicked down by him, and his eyes popped up again. I said, Tang Yi, who did you just call? Tang Yi glanced at him and said nothing. Ning Zihu clicked his tongue, girlfriend, right? Hey, you're having trouble with your girlfriend? Look at your posture, just go down quickly after a step. Girls have to be coaxed. Besides, what's the big deal, you can hang up more than a dozen people's phone calls. Ning Zihu was rarely in the mood for gossip. When Tang Yi heard the word girlfriend, the corners of his mouth twitched strangely, and he said casually, cheat. Ah! Ning Zihu was stunned for a moment, suddenly embarrassed, opened his mouth and didn't think of anything to say. Tang Yi pushed his eyes and looked at him seriously, with an expression like he was about to give me chicken soup and I was waiting to drink it. Comrade Ning blinked hopelessly, well, I'll go back to the hotel first. Don't be late for the meeting tomorrow. In addition, I was looking for a hotel under the sun today, and the food was not very appetizing. After falling asleep, Tang Yi realized that he seemed to have a cold. The second day's meeting ended quickly, and it didn't sound like anything important, except that a new director was coming to Barabara. Tang Yi put his head on his hands, groggy and wanted to sleep, but he didn't understand the name of the new director for a long time. At noon, the company arranged a bus to go to Sanya collectively. Tang Yi rubbed his lead-filled head, thinking about how to make an excuse not to go, when he saw Lin Rui walking towards him. What a coincidence, Manager Tang, our accommodation has been arranged, and we will have another room tonight. Lin Rui has changed into casual short-sleeved shorts, wearing a large sunglasses covered half of his face, and he smiled especially maliciously, how about you go out tonight and find another place? Tang Yi frowned, wondering where Lin Rui's confidence came from. He was shriveled yesterday and can be restored to the same day as before, and he was as cheap as ever. Then I heard a milky voice, Susu. Do. Wai Wei. Tang Yi turned his head and saw Zhou Wai Wei, who was wearing a small vest and swimming trunks, and Zhou Hao, who had a serious face behind him. Zhou Hao was still wearing the same shirt he wore during the morning meeting. He was well dressed and slender. He came out from the dark to meet the light. He didn't look like a father to a 3-year-old child at all. Zhou Waiwei resolutely carried a small bag and embarked on the journey after hearing from his father that he could see Uncle Tang here. It was the first time he took a plane. When the plane took off, his face turned pale with fright, and he muttered, "I'm going to fall, I'm going to fall." The voice was small and the eyes were big. Staring round, the whole person is also nervous and motionless as if he had been immobilized. Zhou Hao was surprised for a long time on the side, and then he remembered that the child did not cry or make trouble because he was holding Tang Yi to frighten him on the road. If you cry casually on the road, you will not be allowed to see Uncle Tang. For the first time, Zhou Hao felt that His Majesty was a little cruel, and he couldn't help but be curious about the relationship between Zhou Waiwei and Tang Yi. However, after seeing that his accompanying secretary tried his best to please Zhou Waiwei's child, but the latter remained unmoved, Zhou Hao attributed this to the child's love for him. After seeing Tang Yi, Zhou Waiwei almost stimulated all the small energy in his body, and he rushed over. Tang Yi bent down and stretched out his hand to pull him, but suddenly the child's momentum was not stopped, and he stumbled back when he fluttered. Seeing this, Zhou Hao took 2 quick steps, grabbed Tang Yi's arm with a quick eye, grabbed his shoulder with the other hand, and took it into his arms. This posture is very stable, not only blocking Zhou Waiwei's impulse, but also pulling Tang Yi together. Except the pose looks a bit ambiguous. "Thank you, Mr. Zhou, are you all right?" Tang Yi lowered his eyes, leaned to one side in a calm manner, squatted down and asked Zhou Waiwei, who was touching his nose. Zhou Waiwei nodded and first reached out and hugged Tang Yi's neck. Lin Rui was stunned for a long time, and then he remembered to say hello to Zhou Hao. "Hello Mr. Zhou, is this the little boy? He looks so handsome." Zhou Waiwei ignored him, while Zhou Hao glanced at his hand thoughtfully, but didn't seem to hear it. Lin Rui smiled dryly, and could only continue to ask, "Mr. Zhou, how will you get there in a while?" "I'm driving." Zhou Hao came back to his senses and nodded lightly at him. Lin Rui had already taken off his sunglasses and waited for this sentence after talking for a long time. Seeing that Zhou Hao seemed to be in a good mood, he hurriedly smiled and took a step forward. "That's good, don't crowd the bus like we did. I just came back to China and I'm not used to driving on the right, otherwise I'd like to drive there too." Zhou Hao glanced at him. Lin Rui bowed his head and smiled embarrassedly, "I got dizzy on the bus." The subtext in these words is too obvious. Tang Yi pinched Zhou Waiwei's small arm like a lotus root, and couldn't help but glance at Lin Rui. Since Lin Rui was arranged by Zhou Hao, then it's all about this. "Oh, that's easy to handle." Zhou Hao looked at Lin Rui, who was already a little embarrassed, and even said in a gentle tone, "The person in charge has motion sickness medicine, hurry up and go to the route. She wants 2 pills, or she'll be sick for a while." Tang Yi. Lin Rui. Zhou Waiwei couldn't understand the adult's eyebrows and eyes lawsuit, and he had already put his arms around Tang Yi's neck and started the crazy cling mode. Tang Yi said that his uncle has a cold, "Don't let you stay away." Zhou Waiwei pushed his face up with aggrieved tears. Zhou Hao sent Lin Rui away, folded his arms and looked at Tang Yi squatting. His face turned pale, and he couldn't help sighing. "This child is still yours." Tang Yi couldn't get away from Zhou Waiwei's offensive and could only deal with it vaguely. "Mr. Zhou, just stay with your child for a few more days." But he insisted on looking for you. "Otherwise, please trouble Mr. Tang for 2 days to help me take care of the child." Zhou Hao sighed a little embarrassedly. "By the way, teach me how to enhance the relationship between father and son." This means that Mr. Tang is named, and it means that the public and private should be clearly defined. Tang Yi still didn't beat Zhou Waiwei, picked him up, pointed to himself with some embarrassment. "I have a cold, I'm afraid of infection." "It's fine," Zhou Hao said with a blank expression, looking at Zhou Weiwei who was nodding desperately. "I'll go buy medicine in a while. There are hypnotic ingredients in the cold medicine, and Tang Yi wants to sleep even more after taking it." Zhou Hao rented a car from a car rental company this time. Although this company is big, it doesn't have many luxury cars. In addition to the peak tourist season, Zhou Hao asked his secretary a lot of tossing to get a X-series car. Zhou Hao was obviously not very satisfied with this car. The secretary waited tremblingly, and after Zhou Hao got into the car with an unpleasant face, he breathed a sigh of relief. Tang Yi felt that his head was heavy as if he had been filled with lead, and he fell asleep in a daze after getting in the car. On the other hand, Zhou Weiwei would look at Tang Yi from time to time along the way, and occasionally kicked and called Dad from behind. "Dad, drive slower, Tang Susu is sleepy." Zhou Hao looked at the motor vehicles that turned around and changed lanes at will and the non-motor vehicles that were showing off in the lane. He held back his suppressed anger and said, "I know. SHH. Zhou Weiwei hurriedly raised his index finger and stretched his neck, shouting softly, "Be quieter." Tang Yi slept very uncomfortable, and the black-rimmed glasses were crooked in a few moments. Zhou Hao finally drove the car out of the city, and when he looked in the rear-view mirror, he saw Zhou Weiwei struggling to remove Tang Yi's glasses. Fortunately, Tang Yi was close to him, otherwise Zhou Hao felt that Zhou Weiwei could twist the child's seat. The glasses were removed smoothly, and Zhou Weiwei was even careful not to wake Tang Yi. Zhou Hao shook his head with a smile, glanced at Tang Yi inadvertently, and almost couldn't move away. ER's main business is software. Every year, the company hires high-precision technical talents from abroad, and also digs some fresh meat and technical men from domestic counterparts or key schools. There are many of these people who are handsome and even beautiful. There are many European and American long legs, and the beautiful ones are like Lin Rui. Although he came in through a relationship, Zhou Hao had to admit, Lin Rui's face is very good. There are many handsome men and beauties in the Mad Bees, Waves and Butterflies team behind Zhou Hao, but his feeling for these people is like looking at delicately packaged inflatable dolls. No matter what it looks like, it's just a naked mass of meat on the bed. Zhou Hao's idea directly led to his aesthetic rebelliousness, so his only romance was when his cousin took him to experience life with both hard and soft. He ordered a black bean-like woman, Zhou Weiwei's mother. It was not a wonderful experience. Haidu was a college student at the time and had little experience. Although Zhou Hao has been working for many years, he is extremely restrained in this regard. He uses his right hand only a handful of times in a year. The two glared at each other, gnashing their teeth and completing each other's life breakthroughs. Then each shook his face and wished he would never give each other a second look in his life. If it wasn't for the fact that Haidu was short of money after 3 years, and this son had a great influence on her carefully chosen marriage, Zhou Hao might never know of Zhou Weiwei's existence. Zhou Hao glanced at Tang Yi from the rear-view mirror again. The latter's closed phoenix eyes were now not covered by glasses, adding some gentleness. People want to care for no reason. It's really weird. Zhou Hao thought to himself, there must be something wrong with this Tang Yi. When Tang Yi woke up, the car was still driving slowly on the road. Zhou Weiwei leaned on the seat and fell asleep. Zhou Hao saw that he was awake, and automatically became the narrator. It's just that he didn't come here many times. Tang Yi watched Zhou Hao say the name of the landmark or the road, and those things slapped their faces with another name. He couldn't help but wipe his face silently. "Oh, by the way, do you know the new director?" After Zhou Hao talked nonsense for more than 10 minutes, he seemed to feel a little dull, changed the subject and started talking about business. Tang Yi was stunned for a moment. He was embarrassed to say that he was sleepy during the morning meeting, so he murmured vaguely. "Hey! It is said that the same school as yours is from a provincial university." Zhou Hao tapped the steering wheel, squinted and said, "Shen Fan, do you know me?" Tang Yi usually never takes unimportant people to heart. But this Shen Fan happens to be an exception, because the text message with the tail number 1109, in addition to being a little abrupt and hot, also has a little coincidence 1109, it is Tang Yi's birthday. When Lin Rui received the wind that day, there was indeed a stranger in the KTV, sitting alone in a corner of the private room. The whole time he leaned in the corner and played with his mobile phone, without saying hello to anyone. Now it seems that it should be Shen Fan. But at that time, Tang Yi was watching Gu Yanting coldly blocking the wine for Lin Rui. The young and handsome man held Lin Rui's arm half gently with one hand, and took bottle after bottle with the other hand. Gu Yanting doesn't like to drink beer, and those friends all know that, so most of everyone's interest in drinking at that time was directed at Gu Yanting. There is no such thing as this store in this village. Tang Yi's heart was full of turmoil, but he had a decent smile on his face to save face for Gu Yanting. It wasn't until he saw that Gu Yanting's eyes began to blur and he was about to run away when he sang, then he smiled and rolled up his sleeves, blocked the circle of people who were toasting Huaner at the time, and said, "I'm coming." In that night, except for Gu Yanting, everyone else was drunk by Tang Yi. He smiled decently, even gentle. At the beginning, he touched the bottle and made a polite remark. When he got to the back, he simply raised his eyebrows and blew on the bottle. Tang Yi put the wine bottle gently on the table, and asked sarcastically, "Promise? Who can control that thing?" When he first got angry about Lin Rui, Gu Yanting also promised not to mention Lin Rui in the future. It's not a fart anymore. Tang Yi was also a little drunk at that time, but the grievances and depression of these years were not reconciled. "Go down." Tang Yi remembered that he was unwilling to hiccups at the time. He let go of the people who were stumbling around, stood alone in front of the coffee table of KTV, and smiled lightly. All of a sudden, "My stomach hurts so bad, I can't say anything." Afterwards, I found out that he was drinking too much to care about him, but it was Shen Fan who never knew him. "Tang Yi? I'm Yanting's friend Shen Fan. I saw that you drank a lot tonight, and your face is not very good. If you need to call me at any time, my brother is on duty at the municipal hospital tonight 137-1109." Tang Yi replied thank you, but what he thought was, even if Gu Yanting sent a text message like this or made a call, he would Tang Yudo can work hard to learn to let go of his past suspicions, and let himself weigh Lin Rui's weight in his heart without being so preoccupied. The white rose that bloomed in my heart has been fragrant for a long time, but the more I look at it, the more good it is. Tang Yi's eyes stared out the window, and after a while, he said, "I'm not very familiar." Lin Rui and President Shen have a good personal relationship. Zhou Hao reminded, and after a while he said, "If Manager Tang is convenient, please take care of Wei for me at night." Tang Yi was stunned for a moment, then looked at Zhou Hao, who had returned to his noble and solemn appearance. Apparently he didn't intend to give him room to refuse. After hesitating for a moment, he had to agree, "Okay." Although there are many cars on the East Line, the road conditions are good. Zhou Hao drove very steadily. Tang Yi fell asleep again in a daze, and when he woke up again, he was already there. Zhou Wei also got out of the car, hugging Zhou Hao's leg and whispering something. After driving for more than 3 hours, Zhou Hao's face showed no signs of fatigue. He patiently lowered his head and watched Zhou Wei dance. There were 2 suitcases at his feet, and the hotel bellboy was waiting respectfully, apparently waiting for a while. Tang Yi was in a trance for a moment, hurriedly sat up, and opened the car door. "Tang Susu, you're awake." Zhou Wei saw his eyes suddenly light up twice, so he wanted to pounce, but Zhou Hao grabbed his neck. "Would you like to sleep a little longer?" Zhou Hao in light-colored clothes and trousers, stood at the door of the hotel and asked Tang Yi, "But you didn't eat anything at noon, so drink some porridge first." "Better." The bellman has quickly lifted the suitcase and entered the hotel. The green bonsai outside the lobby are cleverly placed with small street lamps of various light colors, and the warm atmosphere is appropriate and harmonious. Zhou Hao's measure is just within Tang Yi's bottom line, which makes people feel warm but not embarrassed. Tang Yi gave him a thoughtful look and nodded with a smile. Okay, thank you Mr. Zhou. Zhou Hao said he would take Zhou Weiwei out to eat when he was done, so he asked the restaurant to deliver Tang Yi's porridge and side dishes to the guest room. The hotel's porridge was cooked to just the right temperature, with refreshing side dishes, and it was delivered to the room not long after. Zhou Hao temporarily changed a suite, with the living room and small dining room outside, and 2 bedrooms inside. Tang Yi drank it one by one on the small dining table, while Zhou Weiwei used a small spoon to scoot out cold dishes and send them to his mouth. This feeling of being taken care of by a child is really too happy. After eating the warm white porridge, every pore of Tang Yi, who was ironing, opened. He smiled and looked at Zhou Weiwei, who was staring at him seriously, and suddenly his heart moved. He pulled the child and kissed him on the forehead. Zhou Weiwei was stunned for a moment, and the spoon, which had not been firmly grasped, suddenly fell onto the carpet. Oh, you adults are really annoying. Zhou Weiwei wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, frowning and sighing as if someone had interrupted a very important job. Tang Yi was rarely in a good mood. He smiled and touched Zhou Weiwei's hair to tease her. Don't give it to your uncle? If you don't give it to your uncle, you won't eat it. Ah, Zhou Weiwei glanced at him blankly, obviously embarrassed, but I still have to feed. But uncle is ill, Tang Yi said, what should I do if I need to be coaxed and fed? The child seemed to be very keen to feed Tang Yi, and a small pimple was wrinkled between his brows. And Dad? Zhou Weiwei suddenly raised his head, his eyes lit up. I feed you, you can kiss my dad. Zhou Hao was reading documents in the living room, just 2 steps away from the small dining room. Tang Yi was frightened by the child's brain hole and almost poked the bowl away. Before he could stop it, Zhou Weiwei had already shouted, Dad, do yourself a favor. Tang Yi. Fortunately, Zhou Weiwei seemed to have turned his head, and when Zhou Hao raised his eyebrows, he changed his words, can you feed Susu for me, I'm a little too busy. Zhou Hao put down the computer and walked over with a smile, what's wrong? Zhou Weiwei replied earnestly, Uncle wants someone to feed and coax, I'm busy. Tang Yi was in shock, he waved to Zhou Hao again and again to indicate that he was fine, and he was playing with the children. Who knew that Zhou Hao didn't see it? He sat down on the small dining chair and patted his son's arm, then asked the restaurant to send another spoon. No, Tang Yi quickly pulled Zhou Weiwei, who was about to run to the phone, I'll just wash it. Tang Yi held the spoon and rushed under the water again and again, not knowing what to do for the first time. What I just said was too smooth, it should be said that there is no need for trouble. Although he felt that Zhou Hao was very likely to answer him without trouble. He is very careful with his colleagues. Ning Xiu has a good personal relationship with him. So far, he doesn't even know his home address, birthday, and his usual preferences. Sexuality should be Ning Xiu's intuition, but Tang Yi never responded positively, and Ning Xiu could only vaguely insinuate it every time. Nowadays, Zhou Hao's performance is always stepping on the edge of his bottom line. He speaks politely but is majestic, so that Tang Yi's slick and sophisticated has nowhere to show. If you go out now, let Zhou Hao feed him? Tang Yi felt his scalp tingling just thinking about it. But if you refuse? Weiwei, go see if your Uncle Tang's spoon has been washed. Zhou Hao said in a low voice with a faint smile, maybe your uncle doesn't want Dad to feed him. Zhou Weiwei let out a sigh, a little anxious, is that what you want Dad to coax? Zhou Hao's smile deepened, it's very possible. Tang Yi. Tang Yi shook the spoon, and when he went out again, he found that the restaurant had sent another porridge. Zhou Hao explained, just coax Weiwei to eat. Tang Yi froze for a moment, aren't you going out to eat? Zhou Hao looked at him with a smile, no, we have to coax him anyway, so putting the two together will save trouble. Zhou Weiwei eats very well, asks Tang Yi for a bahaha, just digs a spoonful of porridge and asks Zhou Hao for some vegetables. Zhou Hao changed his chopsticks, put a bit of it into Zhou Weiwei's spoon, and another bit of it into Tang Yi's bowl. The celery and peanuts on both sides must be the same length and size. Tang Yi took 2 bites and couldn't help it, and he laughed first while covering his eyes. "Stop it, Mr. Zhou, my heart skipped a beat at this meal. Are you cool?" Zhou Hao also followed with a smile, "This is heart-wrenching. If you want me to change with Zhou Weiwei just now, your mouth will not fly when you chirp." "That's not necessarily." Tang Yi opened his mouth, and suddenly realized that the bahaha was somewhat ambiguous, so he didn't continue smiling. Just as Zhou Weiwei came over to kiss again, he was stunned when he heard the adult's words, "Here's your mouth." Zhou Weiwei shouted, "I didn't fly." It was 8:30 after dinner, and when the room service took everything away, Tang Yi knew that there was an accident on the bus behind them. "It's not heavy, it's just to avoid the vehicle changing lanes ahead and hit the guardrail." The 3 managers who were injured were not wearing seat belts and were thrown into the aisle. But they were all skin injuries. "Sent to the hospital." The person in charge whispered to Zhou Hao, "The party tomorrow night." Zhou Hao answered the phone in the living room, and did not mean to avoid Tang Yi, "Who are the injured people?" The person in charge reported 3 names, not familiar with them, but they were all people who had just been arranged by the new director Shen Fan a few days ago. "What should I do?" Zhou Hao instructed slowly, "Have the family members of the 3 managers notified them. Remember to arrange the ward. Are you hospitalized? Stay a few more days, and make sure that the managers' the body will fully recover." Tang Yi pulled Zhou Weiwei back to the balcony and quietly closed the balcony door. After a while, Zhou Hao hung up. "Weiwei, can you be in the room by yourself?" Zhou Hao patted Zhou Weiwei's shoulder, turned to Tang Yi and said, "Come with me to the hospital." The 3 managers with skin trauma were placed in single rooms. Tang Yi didn't understand Zhou Hao's intention until he got there. Zhou Hao was waiting for him in the car downstairs. This trip was for Tang Yule to buy it. Other colleagues who took the bus were in shock, and the director who drove his own car like Zhou Hao would not come here to visit with dignity. Tang Yi immediately showed up. What's more, Shen Fan, the new director, has a superior status. Now Lin Rui is hostile to Tang Yi, just for the sake of the future. Tang Yi's selling this favor tonight can be regarded as a precautionary way for himself. You just go to the 2 on the 4th floor. Zhou Hao raised his hand and looked at his watch. I'll wait for you below for half an hour. Tang Yi looks handsome and upright. At this time, he rushed to the hospital in a foreign land to visit the 2 newcomers who had recently joined the company. The 2 little managers who were visited were really flattered and moved to tears. The second little manager felt that there was nothing in return, so he said with all his heart and lungs, "When President Shen arranged the work, I recommended myself to go to Manager Tang, but unfortunately I was taken by Deputy Lin in the end. The manager got in first, and I was so anxious at the time." "Hey, Manager Tang, you are such a nice person, I can tell from a glance that you are really a nice person. This is an emotional one." Tang Yi smiled and politely said a few words, and was about to leave, thinking of it, and asked, "Have your family informed you?" "Notice, but you can't come over until tomorrow." The little manager said with a smile, "For safety reasons, the company has booked them a flight ticket for tomorrow. It's rough and thick, and it's nothing to scratch the skin. The company insists on it." Tang Yi smiled and heard the other party sigh with emotion, "But the deputy manager Lin, that is really a treasure in the family. I heard that his family paid for their own air tickets, and they are already rushing it's on its way." Deputy manager Lin. Tang Yi was taken aback. Lin Rui was the only company manager surnamed Lin. "Yeah, he's on the 5th floor." The little manager pointed upstairs. "Oh, I'm not going to look at it." Tang Yi was silent for a long time, and suddenly asked, "What's the family name of Manager Lin's family?" "It's been a lively fall." Tang Yi broke up with Gu Yanting in the chilling autumn wind in Tea City, and met with each other in the hot night of Sanya. Gu Yanting rushed over in a hurry. He was wearing long-sleeved trousers from the Hangzhou construction site. Because it was too hot, he rolled his sleeves all the way to his forearm, and he was about to button up. He pulled out his strong chest. He hurriedly followed the address, and when he found the hospital, he saw Tang Yi standing on the stairs of the inpatient department, looking down at him. Zhou Hao received a call from Tang Yi long ago. The latter apologetically said that he had something to stay and let him go first. After all, the child was still in the hotel by himself. After hesitating for a while, he hung up the phone with Zhou Weiwei. After a brief communication, the father and son quickly reached an agreement. Zhou Weiwei asked Zhou Hao to continue waiting for his Tang Susu. Because he felt that the outside world was more terrifying, and he was afraid that Tang Susu would be taken away by bad people. Zhou Hao had to admire his son's foresight, because after Tang Yi stood on the steps for a full hour, a bad guy came. Tang Yi raised his hand and gave the man a slap. "Fuck! Tang Yi, why are you crazy?" Before Gu Yanting could react from the shock of seeing Tang Yi, he was staggered by Tang Yi's palm. Tang Yi didn't think about the relationship between the two of them for more than 3 years. He used 10% of his strength, his arms were too violent, and his momentum was also skewed. Gu Yanting was beaten, the right half of his face swelled up quickly, and his ears were buzzing. He rushed here in a hurry, and he didn't expect to see the patient when he said anything. He was beaten before anyone noticed. "You! Are you sick?" Gu Yanting covered his face and shouted angrily, touched the corner of his mouth, and even broke his skin. Tang Yi looked at him quietly for a while, then suddenly said, "Yes, Gu Yanting. I am ill, so I still have hope for you. Breaking up is a mess." Gu Yanting froze for a moment. Tang Yi rubbed his palm, which had just been red, and said calmly, "Lin Rui told you immediately about what happened to the bus this afternoon, right? A kind and considerate person like him will definitely emphasize that he has nothing to do, so that you can feel at ease. But how can you, Gu Yanting, really feel at ease? He must buy the fastest air ticket at all costs to come here, to see if your little white flower is really safe and sound." Tang Yi slowly raised his eyes to look at him. "How long did it take to get to Xiaoshan Airport from your construction site to Xiaoshan Airport?" "Half an hour." Gu Yanting frowned, hesitating to say anything. Tang Yi didn't give him a chance to speak. He smiled to himself. "Is it fortunate that your friendship is shocking? God opened his eyes and even rewarded you during the tourist season." Zhang's direct flight ticket? Gu Yanting, were you worried and apprehensive when you came? Are you afraid that your little white flower will die?" Tang Yi smiled lightly, and looked at the shocked and angry man opposite politely and distantly. Gu Yanting gritted his teeth, but had nothing to say. Tang Yi said exactly what he said, and he really couldn't refute it. The two faced each other in silence for a long time, before Tang Yi sighed softly, "Actually, you didn't think about it, was I in that car?" Gu Yanting was startled and looked over subconsciously. "What?" Gu Yanting was stunned for a moment, opened his mouth, and suddenly became a little scared. He did know that the company Lin Rui went to was the ER where Tang Yi worked. It's just that these days he was exhausted by the tossing of things on the project, and he has not been able to record this information seriously in his mind. When I received a call from Lin Rui today, the other party was in a panic and told him about the situation at the scene, and then said that he was only injured a little. Gu Yanting used to worry for a long time when he saw Lin Rui's hand torn to the skin, and always felt that it was something that this porcelain doll-like beauty should not have. So when I heard the word injured, I suddenly lost my mind, grabbed my wallet and documents and ran over. If Tang Yi was also... Tang Yi looked at Gu Yanting fixedly, and when he was finished digesting, he said softly, "Have you not thought about it? If I was also in the car and was seriously injured, I might have explained it here. There is no one to sign for an operation. He is an orphan with no father, no mother, no relatives, and no reason. Even though there are 3 or 5 good friends, they are the acquaintances of gentlemen. There are a few colleagues, but it is just a nod of friendship. He poured all the affection on Gu Yanting. But today, for the first time, Gu Yanting saw the despair in Tang Yi's eyes. In the past, when they quarreled, it was the last time they broke up. Tang Yi was calm and strategized. This kind of Tang Yi made him a little overwhelmed. I don't know. Gu Yanting turned pale and tried to explain, his lips moved a few times. Tang Yi, Speak, I'll wait for you to finish. Tang Yi said calmly. Gu Yanting paused for a moment, then confessed truthfully, it was Lin Rui who called me, and I didn't think much about it. Tang Yi did not speak. Gu Yanting swallowed and said, I didn't know you were here. If something happened to you, I would definitely be more anxious than now. Who knows? Tang Yi smiled slowly, how about I show you one? Gu Yanting shouted in panic, don't make trouble. Okay, I won't make trouble. I will ask, if Lin Rui really has something to do, he has parents and mothers, and it's your turn to take care of you, an ordinary classmate. Tang Yi added an accent to the words ordinary classmates, which sounded a bit sarcastic. But he is still my savior. I can't just sit back and ignore him when he has something to do, and I can't be so ruthless. Okay, very good. Tang Yi clapped his hands, this sentence is clear-cut and full of emotion. I also tell you that I would rather be ruthless and unrighteous than allow my pillow. The side person puts a first love button in his heart, and he pulls you and hurts, and it makes me restless for the rest of my life. The two looked at each other coldly, and after a while, Tang Yi let out a sigh of relief. I used to think that it was not easy for two people to get together, and they must not cause misunderstandings and hurt their feelings because of poor communication. Tang Yi sighed, this time, we finally made it clear. Gu Yanting's eyes widened in disbelief, and he suddenly thought in his heart, this is really over. Tang Yi. His throat tightened, as if being pinched by something. SHH. Tang Yi raised his hand. In the past 3 years, I have not been a qualified partner. I have excessively interfered in your life and restricted your freedom. I apologize for this. Of course, you also have bad points, but you have made concessions. More than me, an excellent boyfriend. Tang Yi was serious and said in a very calm tone, I don't want anything I put in your residence. The key to the second bedroom is in the shoe cabinet, you can always put the clear things out. If you find it troublesome, I will go back and find someone to move it, which will take you about half an hour. The house is in your name, and it belongs to you. I will not interfere in any way to live or sell it. I left the apartment, and there must always be a place to stay. Items such as water and gas cards are all in the drawer under the TV cabinet. Tang Yi, calm down, Don't call me if you have nothing to do in the future. Tang Yi didn't hear anything, but said calmly, don't call me if you have anything, look for 110 or 120, you really can't call 119. The lotus flower or the black fungus has nothing to do with me. It's better that we say goodbye from now on, and don't communicate with each other. Do you understand? Are you really here? Gu Yanting was anxious and stretched out his hand to pull Tang Yi, I don't agree. Disagree. Tang Yi's eyes moved slowly from the wrist that Gu Yanting grabbed, until he met the latter's red eyes, and then he smiled, you still don't understand me. Gu Yanting, when did I ask your opinion? I'm just announcing. The sidewalk outside the hospital is very narrow, Tang Yi walked very slowly, walked from the sidewalk to the carriageway along the curb, and then walked across the carriageway in front of a line of speeding cars. I came to a bridge that I don't know what it was called. The flowing water under the bridge is very quiet, illuminated by colorful neon lights, which is quite prosperous and extravagant. He raised his hands and rubbed his temples. He took 2 more breaths slowly. I can't tell where the pain is, maybe it's not pain or discomfort. It's uncomfortable everywhere, and the pores are full of unwillingness and panic. He walked back and forth on the bridge twice, then suddenly jumped up and kicked the guardrail hard, and when the numbness of the ankle attached to the calf came, he closed his eyes and cursed, "Fuck." The first time he met Gu Yanting was on the bridge, and now he broke up on the bridge. What a coincidence. Tang Yi leaned against the railing and sighed heavily for a long time. He has been making money in his spare time since elementary school. No matter how many kind-hearted neighbors there are, they are all ordinary people who live a tight life. So he took advantage of the free time after school and went to work in the orchid bean factory in the next village. Rows of people. Everyone has arranged a small table with a set of blades on it. Tang Yi and the others took the big head exposed by the beans and slashed on the blade. The price of a flat knife and a cross knife are different. And what this job requires is the amount, and the wages are settled in terms of kilograms. Most of the people who do this work are old women in the village. They work quickly, wearing protective gloves to pick up beans and drop a sack in a short time. Tang Yi was in a hurry, for fear that he would be kicked away by the boss if he slowed down, so he also accelerated his movements, so Bainan's 10 fingers often accidentally pressed on the blade by mistake, and raised a piece of flesh, which was horrible to see. His fingers were aching, but he had to endure it desperately for the seemingly reasonable wages. Have to. Tang Yi, who was less than 10 years old at the time, thought that this was a compromise. However, most of the things in life are not satisfactory. He has been working hard to get rid of the fate of being enslaved, and he has repeatedly thought of various ways to make money for a penny. When he was a child, he cut beans, peeled garlic cloves, and pasted chef hats. When I was a little older, I was a handyman moving bricks and transporting sand. Later, when I went to high school, I started tutoring others under the introduction of my teacher, and at the same time I sold some learning materials myself. After he was admitted to university, he had no way to go, so he wholesaled some small items from the market and set up a stall on the Yuelao Bridge in Chinch. Then, in the freshman year, in the salty sea breeze, as soon as I looked up, I saw Gu Yanting smiling and arrogant. Gu Yanting and a few classmates walked slowly along the Yuelao Bridge. It was no exaggeration to say that Yuelao Kiao was full of people that day, but Gu Yanting was so conspicuous, his eyebrows and eyes were profound, and he really stood out from the crowd. Tang Yi squinted and looked over, thinking, this person is smiling really well. Then, his eyes lightly fell on Gu Yanting's worn heels and the shirt that had been washed many times. A few years later, the two met in the alumni group, but Tang Yi never said it. He was actually moved by this person in his freshman year. He likes Gu Yanting, not because the latter is outstanding, but in the minds of the teenagers who set up the stall, the white shirt that was washed and wrinkled was exactly the height that he could climb, and wearing white the man in the shirt also met his eyes. Yefen wrapped in the slight fishy smell on the water and slowly whirled around. Tang Yi was stunned for a while, and then the feeling in all directions began to slowly recover. He rubbed his face, remembering that he was staying in Zhou Hao's suite tonight. He didn't bring his keys, his ID card and wallet were left in the hotel, and he couldn't help sighing. It's 12 o'clock in the middle of the night, there are not many taxis running on the road, but there are motorcycles running around, but I don't know why. Slip away. Tang Yi pinched his brows and looked around, thinking that it would be better to find an internet cafe or something to spend the night all night, rather than going back and disturbing other people's sleep. When I looked up, I saw a black car parked across the road. The man in the driver's seat supported his head with his hands, saw him look over and waved. It turned out to be Zhou Hao. Tang Yi was stunned by the bridge for a while, then hurriedly found a zebra crossing and walked over. Zhou Hao waited in the car for a while, and when Tang Yi came over in a trance, he smiled and said, "Hello, what a coincidence. It's a coincidence that I can meet you here at night." Tang Yi's emotions were all shocked. He looked at the way he walked from the hospital. The direction seems to be the opposite of going to the hotel. It's quite a coincidence, Tang Yi coughed, looking at Zhou Hao's half-smiling eyes, and finally couldn't help asking, "Or, you didn't leave?" Zhou Hao raised his eyebrows, and after a while, he smiled and said, "I haven't left, I've been waiting for you." "Waiting? Why wait? How long have you waited?" Tang Yi didn't dare to ask. He knew that he was a little emotional just now, and he wandered outside for a long time. If Zhou Hao just happened to meet and waited for a while, it would be fine, but if he didn't leave when he was in the hospital, it would have been several hours. A boss is so considerate to his subordinates, Tang Yi does not believe it. Even if I add Zhou Weiwei's affection, I can't believe it. After all, Zhou Weiwei's mother didn't seem to care about Zhou Hao. But what does Zhou Hao mean to him? Tang Yi can't believe it. Today is the second time they meet. What's more, Zhou Hao still has children. Tang Yi sat in the co-pilot, hesitated for a while, but politely expressed his thanks. "Thank you, Mr. Zhou." After a while, he added another sentence, "I'm causing you trouble." Did not speak. He didn't know what to say. He guessed something about Tang Yi in the hospital. Although they were far away and couldn't hear the conversation between him and the man, the two big men could be so emotional, especially because Tang Yi lost his soul after the incident. The feeling was quite deep, not ordinary. Although Zhou Hao has no experience in this field, it does not mean that he does not understand anything. Even when he realized that Tang Yi might like a man, he felt faintly excited. When he looked at the other party again, he felt that he had to control himself a little so that he would not do anything shocking. For example, pull Tang Yi and hug him. For example, kissing someone, or abducting someone from Zhou Weiwei's small bed to his own big bed. Tang Yi was still wearing glasses, and his face was pale when the fever just subsided during the day, leaning on the seat like a sick beauty. He squeezed the corners of his lips, and replied calmly, "You're welcome, I'm fine anyway." Zhou Hao has nothing to do, this is a bit strange. Tang Yi smiled and didn't speak, and then the next morning, he learned that Zhou Hao had caught the early flight and left. "Mr. Zhou asked me to tell Manager Tang that today I will trouble Manager Tang to take care of the child." Zhou Hao's accompanying secretary respectfully stood at the door of the suite and said to Tang Yi, "He will go to Shanghai. The return flight in the afternoon, if not delayed, is just in time for tonight's party." Tang Yi was still wearing pajamas and was about to call Zhou Weiwei to get up. Hearing this, he was stunned for a while, and suddenly said, "The schedule is so tight? President Zhou is too hard." "No, it was originally the flight last night," said the secretary. "Mr. Zhou asked me to change the booking temporarily." "What time was last night?" 22:50. "That's when he's on the road. Zhou Hao was in time, right? And to wait for him? Dry until after 1 o'clock in the morning?" Tang Yi stood on the spot and frowned, silent for a while, and said calmly, "I see, thank you Secretary Zhao." The secretary came late, just before the end of breakfast. It was a disguised reminder to Tang Yi to have breakfast. Tang Yi dug Zhou Weiwei out of the bed, put him in a casual dress, and then carried him to the restaurant. There were a lot of people in the restaurant. Tang Yi looked around and saw that most of them were from his own company. Has 5 branches, T-City is the smallest one, although the business scope of each branch is different, but as long as everyone gets together, there will always be someone who wants to differentiate come noble. Representatives of some branch companies can't wait to show their nostrils when they see colleagues in small places. Some people even asked in amazement when Tang Yi went to the meeting for the first time, "Hey? City tea? Which province?" Tang Yi didn't want to eat this set, and didn't want to make enemies, so he just passed by that person who gave a fart and ignored it. So after that, someone remembered that there was a big marketing manager in City Tea. He came in late today and brought another child, and immediately someone started talking in a low voice. Tang Yi was slightly startled, and suddenly realized that most of them had never seen Zhou Weiwei. Zhou Weiwei hadn't woken up yet, was hugged by Tang Yi, wrapped his arms around his neck and called Dad in a daze. Tang Yi corrected him twice to no avail, so he had to put him in a visible position first and hurry up to pick up the meal. Soon an unfamiliar colleague came over. "Manager Tang, long time no see." Tang Yi raised the plate in his hand, indicating that it was inconvenient to shake hands. "Hello. Is that your child?" The person who came here really came to gossip, and asked with a smile. "Manager Tang really can't see it, getting married and having children at such a young age." Tang Yi's eyes moved slightly, seeing a few people gathered together, looking here from time to time. He suddenly understood, shook his head and said, "I'm not married yet." "Ah, not yet." The visitor was stunned for a moment. Seeing that Tang Yi had turned to the other side, his eyes flickered and he didn't follow, turned and walked back towards the group of people. Tang Yi was worried that the child was staying by himself. From a distance, he saw Zhou Weiwei's little head bumping against the table. Past. Zhou Weiwei didn't wake up, with a sad face and pitifully not wanting to eat. Tang Yi patiently coaxed him, and as soon as he coaxed him to take a bite of bread, he saw someone sitting across from him, who was in the circle just now. "Hey, the little boy is so nice, what's your name?" The person smiled and reached out to touch Zhou Weiwei's head, but Zhou Weiwei leaned back and didn't touch it. Tang Yi hates these people who are constantly spying on other people's news, and then take it back and gossip. Especially the other party's unrelenting posture made him frown. "Little boy, why is your father here, and mother?" As soon as Tang Yi said he was not married, this man asked Zhou Weiwei's mother in a mocking tone. Zhou Weiwei was always brooding about the fact that his mother didn't want him. Tang Yi's face sank, and he was immediately annoyed. Who knew that before he could say anything, he heard Zhou Weiwei drill into his arms, and suddenly said in a milky voice, "Susu, I have a grandfather who can live a long life." Ah! The other party was stunned for a moment, wondering if the child didn't understand his question, so he asked along, "Really?" "Yes." Zhou Weiwei tilted his head, blinked, and said, "You know why?" Why? Because Grandpa never minds his own business." Zhou Weiwei finally found his favorite outlet for getting out of bed. The child with a head and a head, there is already a shadow of Zhou Hao's cold and arrogant body. He pursed his little mouth, frowned and shouted at the person opposite, "Bah!" It is said that when a child is 3 years old when he sees old age, Zhou Weiwei learned to tease others tepidly after following Zhou Hao. The representative who was smiling just now was like a pig's liver with a pestle in place, like a club. Tang Yi didn't mean to relieve him, but hugged Zhou Weiwei to his lap again, brought a small milk cup, and said softly, "Come, have a drink of milk." The whole day after that, no one came over to touch the bad luck. Whether it was eating or dragging Zhou Weiwei to play in the hotel pool, Tang Yi was very clean. After Ning Xiu arrived in Sanya, he went to pay homage to Guanyin of the South China Sea non-stop, and went back at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when he called Tang Yi excitedly on the way. "Tang Yi, don't forget to be happy at night. You said there are beautiful girls bathing in the hot spring together." Tang Yi responded, "Okay." "Oh, yes, I heard that Lin Rui went back today." Ning Xiu bruised his teeth and did not understand, how hurt he is. "Isn't it just a scratch? I started to hear that the company reimbursed a few of their family members for their round-trip air tickets and accommodation, and I was envious for a while. Isn't this free travel?" Tang Yi really didn't know about Lin Rui's return, but he didn't want to know either, so he snorted, "I don't know. Also, hey, I bought some fruit and brought it to the hotel for you to eat. Which room are you in?" Tang Yi and Zhou Hao lived together, basically no one else knew. They arrived at the hotel early and went out again last night. Tang Yi hesitated for a while, but Ning Xiu had already realized it intelligently. "Well, you can come and get it from me, I'm in 1602. Ning Xiu bought a lot of fruit. He didn't plan to stay here on November 11th. He took advantage of his business trip to go to Nanshan Temple to ask for the safety of the elderly at home. "I plan to bring back less fruit. The boxes are all packed, and there are many cooked ones that are bought and eaten with Tang Yi. Tropical fruits are indeed sweeter than those bought in Tea City. Zhou Weiwei has become Tang Yi's little tail, follow wherever he goes. When we went to Ning Zihu's room to eat fruit together, the little guy picked up the mango and was about to chew it. Ning Zihu was surprised when he saw the child. He clicked and flicked Zhou Weiwei's head. This one has to be peeled off, not directly gnawed. Zhou Weiwei blinked at Tang Yi. Ning Zihu couldn't help but be amused. Hey, don't believe me. Cubs, I'll get it for you. A full circle. Zhou Weiwei was obviously reluctant to eat it, so he asked for a piece of skin from Ning Zihu and nibbled it first, and then ate it in small bites. Tang Yi always looked at him with a smile. When he saw him chewing on the peel, his eyes stinged and he couldn't help turning his head away. When he and Gu Yanting first lived together, when they bought a house, the two of them suddenly became poor, and only when it came to festivals were they willing to buy some fruit to eat. At that time, it was rare to buy mangoes, so Gu Yanting carefully cut the pulp on both sides into cubes with a knife, put it in a bowl, and brought it to Tang Yi's desk. Then he squatted, guarding the trash can and chewing the peel. Ning Zihu took another careless hand and handed it to Tang Yi. Tang Yi froze for a moment, then smiled and said, "I'd better eat bananas." The protagonist of the evening party was Shen Fan. When Zhou Hao drove back last night, he casually clicked on the reason for the party. Originally, the former CEO of ER Company had absolute control over ER, and the combined shares held by the rest of the directors, including Zhou Hao, were only a tiny fraction of the total. However, with the continuous development of ER in recent years, the tiny share dividend has also become a lot of money. The wealth is moving, so the old directors began to dilute the shares of the original boss by increasing capital and acquiring a series of activities under the pretext of the company's development needs. Even the directors who initially invested in technology wanted to increase their share and ran to the former boss's house crying and making trouble. When the company was founded, ER was just a small company with a registered capital of 100,000 yuan. After years of development, shareholders and members have left and gone, and the old directors who have been replaced after successive replacements have the capital to talk with the boss about brothers. The former boss has a solid personality and was repeatedly stabbed in the back of his brother. Now, more directors have begun to attract investment and promote the development of the film and television entertainment industry. This boss has no choice but to retreat behind the scenes and let his own son do it. Come up. The boss's own son is Shen Fan. Before coming here, the directors have turned Shen Fan's background upside down, but they didn't find the slightest outlier. This is an excellent young man who has been a good student of the school since childhood. However, the businessman is tricky. In the eyes of these old goblins who have been in a frying pan for so many years, good students are the least worthy of fear. So Shen Fan and Sanya proposed to take office and wanted to meet the middle management of each company. The old directors changed their minds and changed it into a meeting in Haikao. Go to Sanya. Second, very few people in the middle management know the inside story. If someone leaves after a meeting in Haikao, they will offend Shen Fan unintentionally. Young people are always in a hurry to do things. When Shen Fan really wants to kill the chicken and show the monkeys standing, the chickens who have suffered unpredictable disasters will immediately be forced into the old director's camp. Zhou Hao said casually, but Tang Yi secretly sweated. In any case, when he finished the meeting, he did have the idea of going back halfway. Not to mention the relationship between Shen Fan and Gu Yanting's friends, from this matter alone, he almost became someone else's gun. What's more, he has broken up with Gu Yanting now, and he has no idea of relying on his old relationship to build a relationship. Tomorrow, the key point of wearing long is always right. Zhou Hao turned his head at that time, his eyes were smiling. If you can, wait for me to come back and come together. Tang Yi was a little lost for a moment, and wanted to ask him if it was a coincidence or intentional that he took him with him at noon, but he didn't ask until the hotel went to sleep. Dress formally at night. Tang Yi leaned on the hotel sofa and turned his head to remind Ning Xiu. The new boss will be there, it's best to pay attention. Ning Xiu was stunned for a moment, a little surprised. Didn't you say we'll have a meal together, and then have fun together after dinner? Tang Yi smiled, it won't be troublesome for you to come up and change your clothes at that time. Ning Xiu snorted, yes, then let's go there together. No, Tang Yi glanced at Zhou Weiwei, whose face was sticky, and sighed softly, go down first, I'm waiting for someone. Zhou Hao's plane was still late. Tang Yi took Zhou Weiwei back to the room, and head-to-head looking for the little guy's evening dress. He was notified by Secretary Zhao. Mr. Zhou's flight is delayed, and the exact departure time is uncertain, Secretary Zhao said with a sad face. Zhou Hang's original flight was after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and arrived in Sanya at 6 o'clock. It was just right to change clothes at the hotel and then go to the banquet hall. However, the flight was delayed at the moment, and it was easy to say that the delay was less than half an hour. If the delay was too long, maybe the banquet would be completely missed. Secretary Zhao asked Tang Yi somewhat cautiously, Manager Tang, why don't you go first? There will be a small ceremony at the beginning of the party. The higher the status, the later it will appear. If a middle-level person like them is later than the leader, it will be obviously disrespectful. Tang Yi did not want to offend the leaders, especially Shen Fan. However, Zhou Hao hadn't come back yet, and Secretary Zhao said or else go over first. He lowered his eyes slightly and shook his head slowly, it's okay, I'll wait for Mr. Zhou. Secretary Zhao stepped back, and did not forget to bring the door of the suite before leaving. Zhou Hao is a strict leader, and at the same time pays attention to many things to the point of being critical. Secretary Zhao received several times more salary than others, so naturally he included this nitpicking into his responsibilities, and vaguely understood the implications of some special requirements. For example, before Mr. Zhou left, when he told him that he had something to inform Manager Tang, he must see him in person. When he grasped it to President Zhou, he naturally added the other party's movements and expressions. Mr. Zhou, I have already told Manager Tang. Manager Tang did not hesitate and said that he would wait for you to come over. The voice on the other end of the phone was low and steady. Secretary Zhao listened with bated breath, and finally got two very important words. Zhou Hao said, very good. Secretary Zhao is not sure if this is a good voice. Then, he stopped Zhou Hao with a smile and added, if he hesitates, he won't let you see it. And just next to Zhou Huding's suite, there is also a man of integrity who is listening to the assistant's report. Mr. Shen, Mr. Lin has returned to City T. I just called to ask when you will be back. The tail picked out the part that Shen Fan wanted to hear. He said he planned to help Mr. Gu hold a birthday party and asked if you would go. Oh. Shen Fan's slender fingers lightly placed on the side of his face, touched his tear mole and hummed, go. Okay. The assistant wrote it down, and added, Mr. Zhou was with Manager Tang from noon to night yesterday. Today, Manager Tang brought a child, which was found to be the illegitimate child of Mr. Zhou. Shen Fan sat on the sofa with his long legs folded, and still faintly spit out a word, N. The work to be reported by the assistant is almost over. When I was about to think of the old man's phone call at noon, he said with a bit of anxiety, the old man said that you must go down on time tonight. Downstairs there are more than a dozen directors of the company, don't be light on them. This time Shen Fan didn't say anything, but looked up casually. The assistant's heart trembled, and he heard Shen Fan say slowly, I can't recognize the owner's dog, you say, should I fight or should I stay?